You guys don't need to be in my house. Okay. So let's see if we're live now on YouTube. Maybe. Let me see. It's supposed to be on YouTube. Let's see. Okay, we're live on YouTube. Let's see if we're live on TikTok. Yes, we are live on TikTok. Excellent. Although TikTok, I don't think you see me properly. My bad. Orientation selection optional while live. Damn, my bad, y'all. Maybe next time I'll try to fix the orientation. Okay, and then Patreon. I don't know if you guys are in the building. Anybody on TikTok, let me know whether the Patreon is working or not. Let me see. It's supposed to have set up on its own, and I don't know if it did. I'm afraid to hit setup live because, okay, well, let me just hit it and see what happens. Oh. Start live. I don't know. Okay, we'll just hope. I'm hoping that this worked. My bad for all of the crazy, confusing emails. I don't know if this is showing up all on Restream or not, but I'll see. So TikTok is working fine. And yeah, see, the comments don't all pull in from TikTok, which is annoying. That's fine, though. I can have you guys open on a different tab. Yeah, I think I could get YouTube comments on here, but we'll see. Anyways. Okay. Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome to class. Oh, man, everything is so delayed, too. I don't know what to do. You guys were all like, I don't know, like a 10 seconds behind me. Oh, well, you guys know I'm terrible at looking at the chat anyway, so I guess we'll just start. Okay, so hey everybody, welcome back to Midnight Scholar Society. We have been changing so much around here when it comes to technology, and in fact, that's kind of the conversation of current events is technology and how technology is impacting us today, especially as we exist in a global economy. And what does that mean for you, an individual, right? I'm pretty sure you've probably heard globalization, those buzzwords and stuff like that before, but we're going to kind of talk about it because it's on the top of my mind. Actually, I have to be very much on schedule today because I have an essay to write on comparative advantages in global economics. So it's at the top of my mind. So if I use a lot of historical economy references today, that's why. But it's also part of current events and what's going on. So one, obviously, everybody let me know in the chat how you've been, especially for those of you on Patreon. So hello, everybody. If you'd like to take courses or classes or join book club over the Midnight Scholar Society, please do join the Patreon. You can join for free. You get newsletters with lots of helpful information. And if you ever need to take courses, you can always join and become a patron, a member. And you can take all of the courses at your own pace, as fast or as slow as you need to take them. That also includes being able to email me about course materials specifically. If you need one-on-ones, I do offer that, and I offer 50% off to community members. And I think that's that's it. We have a lot of fun. Everybody's always growing, and I'm always every now and again I get students who come back and they tell me about the successes that they've had since the last time we've talked or since they've taken a class. And it fills me with joy and so much gratitude every single time because it's the work that I do. So yeah, if you'd like to join us over at the Midnight Scholar Society. It's over on Patreon. That's where I house everything. And I broadcast all over the place. So you can subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, Patreon, get me where you need me. Okay, now that being said, I do want to talk about really quick what's going on over at book club before I jump into current events, and then we'll segue into two student FAQs. I can probably get maybe two, maybe I can get three done, because I've gotten a lot faster at them, if you guys have noticed. So book club. Ooh, I'm super excited. So book club is next Tuesday. What is that? The 29th? 31st. It's the 31st, March 31st. And we're doing The King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover. Okay. I'm so excited. By Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. So I did tell you we're doing part two. Okay, in part one, I mentioned to everybody that this is written in the 90s, so it is heavily gendered. Okay, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette are struggling for their lives as men in a gendered society, trying to figure out how they fit and who they are and what masculine maturity looks like, and they're trying to look for that in men. You know, ooh, I don't know if I want to listen to this. Sorry, hold on, guys. You know, I like to listen to music as we do class. What are we feeling? What are we feeling? Are we going off grid? You know what? We'll just let nature take its course. Okay, where was I? I was looking at myself over here on TikTok. Okay. So what we have to understand is that they're very heavily gendered. They're still stuck in patriarchy, and they're trying to dismantle that as they go. But what's great is we get a lot of conversation about male and masculine, specifically masculine archetypes. Now, you all have probably noticed I did do some videos today, if you haven't seen them yet, talking about how masculine and feminine are two states of being. They hold states of consciousness inside of them. Masculine states hold assertive consciousness, so how you connect with and do. So it's all action based. It's all thinking. This is concrete, making something as a human being. And then feminine states are receptive states. So this is all like what you do when you're meditating and you're receiving, you're allowing information to pass by or emotions to pass you by without acting on them. That's a feminine state of being. So you can understand that meditating and maybe being in flow state while playing the piano, while inherently both of them are divine, they're in two different states of being, and one is masculine, one is feminine. That has nothing to do with gender and everything to do with how you operate as a human being, right? So we did Women Who Run with Wolves last year, and this year we're looking at masculine archetypes. Women Who Run with Wolves was feminine, and it's a really great time to kind of stop and take a breather, and I think read some things going on around us. Now, I just so happen to have none of the books on me as we talk about this, but this year, so as we finish up this, I'm going to actually have us go slower with this book, because each section I think is worth sitting with for a while. And we'll look at king archetypes, we'll look at warrior archetypes, we'll look at magician archetypes, and we'll look at lover archetypes across media, and really analyze so that you guys can have a chance not only to experience what that energy is like in your body and embodiment, but then also seeing mature representations of that and being able to dissect and discern immature aspects of masculine archetypes in yourself and also in environment, so you can make better choices in your life. So we're going to pick up Peter Pan. I've been going through that. You guys know, honestly, people are going wild on the internet right now about me talking about Peter Pan. They're like, whoa, that wasn't in the Wikipedia page. What are you talking about? What book are you reading? Most people are like, who's the author of this book? They're all I've got people in a storm just going through Peter Pan is a satire. So, there's a lot of conversation being had about essentially what was the manosphere before we called it the manosphere. Virginia Woolf coined it, back then. It's like, the Peter Pan syndrome, the boys who can never grow up, things like that. So it's been a concept that's been around for quite some time and has been talked about for just as long. So we're going to look at that through Peter Pan, through the lens. That way, I think The Wizard of Oz is great because Dorothy is somebody who possesses all of the masculine archetypes, but around her is insecurity, right? You got the scarecrow, the cowardly lion, the tin heart man, or whatever, and I don't know who else is there. But she possesses courage, her heart, and brains, right? And is that what it is? Yeah, she possesses those things and helps these other figures see that through her actions and her being there, right? And so we also get a look at we also get a look at global finance, right? Because the Wizard of Oz was originally, see, again, we talk about satire, right? It was originally talking about, without being a big whistleblower in the room and being so obvious, about the gold standard, and it changing hands, which was a huge economical disaster, because globally speaking, the US is like the bank of the world, so to speak. That, a lot of stuff gets traded in US dollars. And then what happens when you become kind of the capital financier of the world, so to speak, is anybody who pegs anything to you now has to be a victim to your internal dynamics. So, when prices go up or down in America, that impacts other countries. So you get the Latin American debt crisis that happened. Um, and then because of the debt crisis, so, like when the gold standard, when they decided to stop backing the dollar with gold, then they had to come in and reorganize the WHO, or the world, not the WHO, the World Health Organization, the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Yeah, they had a whole conference, like a not Breton something. I can't remember what it was called, but they had a whole conference about it. And eventually they had to reorganize how they were going to finance the world, essentially, because things were collapsing. And they got the WMF, I can't remember what it's called, but it's how they help people who have sorry. So imagine you're trading in the dollar and the dollar collapses, right? You get told that you're irresponsible. And so the people who collapsed you will come over and give you a loan to help you get out of that irresponsible debt. Because, that's what happened in Mexico. That's what happened in, I think, was it Venezuela, Argentina, one of those countries. When we talk about what happened in the 1990s or the late 80s and the 90s. So anyways, there's a whole thing that happened. And The Wizard of Oz was really a conversation piece right at the moment, a pivotal moment in time in history. So, we talk about these are they're children's stories, but then you've got this children's stories that's cluing you in on a pivotal time in history and making it really fucking obvious. And people are like, can you explain it to me like I'm 5? Well, a lot of people did. Some people wanted the manosphere explained to them like they were 5. So James Barrie, I guess, gave them the manuscript, everything that goes on the inside. And people were really uncomfortable by that if they knew what they were listening to. And some people did. Some people knew what they were listening to. And some people were uncomfortable about that. And you couldn't say anything because if you did, people just said, oh, you're just doing too much. It's just a children's story, Meanwhile, Frank Baum, is that his name? The Wizard of Oz were there. Frank Baum's, made history, and nobody knows what for. They just think it was because of Wicked, because of Elphaba. That was just the impact, Anyways, so The Wizard of Oz is being added to the list. Also, The Tales of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. The reason why I picked that as a book club book this year is because she just, oh my goodness, Ursula Le Guin is known for trying to bridge Eastern and Western ideologies. When she was a kid, she was obsessed with the Chinese, the Chao Chang, the Ti Chang. Anyways, it's a poetic text that's very sacred, meaning it's all about life and spirituality and all that kind of stuff. And it's great. I just don't know how to say the name of it. I do enjoy it, and I did read quite a bit of it. Gotta finish it actually. Actually, my husband, he read it and he liked it. But I'm a terrible book. Like anytime we have a book club, like, I try to buddy read with my husband. He finishes the books and I'm always like, yeah, I'll finish. And then he just looks at me and he just smiles and he nods and walks off. And I'm like, I said, I'll read it, like I'm getting better though. I promised my kid I'd read Detective Beans and I'm like on page 47. And that is progress because I said I'd read it maybe last summer. Jeez. You know what I mean? So I'm making progress. But no. It was, what was he saying? He read something. But anyways, yeah, Ursula Le Guin was really big into Eastern and Western philosophies and asking questions about heroes and their journeys and stuff like that. So that's another great one that has already, I read just the first chapter and I saw already the magician archetype is right there, very heavy on the page. The king archetype to some degree is heavy on the page. There's many different archetypes being displayed and played in a very, I think, complex way that we get more so. I thought about Lord of the Rings, but that's too archetypal, I think. While Tolkien is really good at what he does, I think it's still too surface level. And by that, I just mean I think Tolkien was more concerned with trying to create mythology in the Western fabric that is in the UK, right? Because it's been so gutted. But in doing that, a lot of the archetypes are very kind of like C.S. Lewis. They're very just stark. They're very binary. Like Aragon is the king. There's not a lot of complexity to it. And I remember I made kind of quite a bit of comics out of it. And I think that there is complexity to be had. I just think that there are other titles that can do that for us without us doing the heavy lifting of talking about it and looking at it. But it's still on my list of things to get to and to read. I haven't read fully the Lord of the Rings. I had the chance when I was like in the 5th grade or 6th grade, and I just couldn't get into it. And then I just put it off for like life until now. And I think that that's for a reason, you know. Let's see what else was on the list. Oh, I think that's it. No, yes, maybe. I don't know. Let me think one more time. Yes, I think that is it. Oh, the film. There's a film that I watched, The Woman King with Viola Davis. Oh man, it was great. It was great. I loved watching that movie. And it was a perfect representation of warrior energy and all of the different aspects that go into it, including the parts that Robert Moore talks about of overcoming lust, right? All of these conversations of sacrifice and what pure devotional energy looks like and all of that is right there in The Warrior King. No, The Woman King. The Woman King. And man, it was great. It was great. It was a great coming of age story. Honestly, I thought it was a great YA book without being a book. Usually, books have a better context and better material than the movies that are made from them, right? Like Hunger Games, Divergent, things like that. Those all came from the books and source material that's far richer. And this one I felt like was really rich, as if it had been a book. That was the first time I watched something, and I was like, dang, I wish this was a book. And I was like, damn, I got to watch this without having to read it. This is great. Honestly, Viola Davis hit it out of the park on that. The only critique that I would have is that I wish that I would have seen our main heroine's autonomy, like what life looked like for her, or a promise of what life looked like for her as she integrated into the warrior status from initiate. But anyways, it's a great movie. So we're going to talk about that film too. That'll just be like assigned watching. So that's what we all have to look forward to for the next year when it comes to book club over the Midnight Scholar Society. We're going to be reading Peter Pan, The Wizard of Oz, Tales of Earthsea, and we're going to be looking and referring back to King, Warrior, Magician, Lover over and over and over throughout the year as we break down the archetypes in each one and the lessons that we get from it. Also, I do want to recommend to anybody listening the PBS documentary on Joseph Campbell. Oh man, I'm not a huge fan of Joseph Campbell right off the bat, just because one, he's white man, and two, no, he gets a lot of criticism for looking at mythology in a Eurocentric kind of lens, and I think that criticism is worth noting. But then also at the same time, he did so much work on mythology through the Eurocentric lens, which means he did a lot of work in cultural anthropology of his own culture, which I think is also worth noting. So I would really recommend watching the documentary because, one, if you're from the Western culture, the Western world, you speak English as your native language, you're going to get a lot of in-depth understanding of mythology and of the language that surrounds it and archetypes and what that does, and that might help bridge. Funny, this was made back in 1988, and it was giving people spiritual revolutions because it was giving them language that they didn't have. You have to understand, back in 1988, you essentially had to have paranormal events happen for people to believe anything that you had to say. You get what I'm saying? What her name? Dolores Cannon, maybe that's her. She was a hypnotist. An analyst, not necessarily of the Jungian variety, but she did depth psychology, and she was a hypnotist, and so she focused an awful lot on people who were having alien kind of contact, time travelers. She channeled with Nostradamus quite a few different times. She's having these really crazy, fucking wild experiences between her and her clients. Okay, that's what's happening. You got this lady, and she's just willing to ask the question. It's like X-Files, but real life, where you're presented with some weird shit, and instead of just going, well, that's weird, I guess they need more meds, you go, well, why would you say that? What made you say that? Us who were too curious for our own good, I suppose. Anyways, during her time, essentially she would have conferences and people would come out, and sometimes she'd say, oh, the energies are here, they make themselves known. The more people are skeptical, the more synchronistic, chaotic catastrophe that happens to kind of get everybody on the same page. So essentially, the more non-believers there are, the more hectic, crazy shit that happens in the converging, just so that the people who have a hard hard time with belief cannot in any way, shape, or form refute what they're experiencing, which is why when people experience things as a group, it creates a certain type of resonance that cannot be penetrated. You can't convince people that something didn't happen to them when everybody who was involved was like, oh, this all happened, and then they went away with that experience, right? You can't go around and be like, are you sure? When other people can corroborate. And that's culture and conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, why did I bring that up? I think I brought that up to mention. Oh yeah, back in the day, you know, you had to, Dolores Cannon wrote about how sometimes she'd be in a conference room, and all of a sudden a flood would just, water would just cave in from the wall, just cave in all of a sudden. No problems, no plumbing issues, no nothing, just water. And people are just confused. What happened? The building just dropped water. Where did the water even come from? Like everybody's trying to figure out what happened, what anomaly caused this event, and it's the energies, right? The specific place, everything that happened converged in a way, and the more non-believe, the more people who just don't have understanding, the heavier that energy has to impact or hit, which means usually some type of eruption, something that people cannot deny. That happens all the time. That's why whenever you're having magical experiences, everybody goes, "You saw that, right? You saw that, right? Yeah, you experienced that, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah." And that happens like that. I have it all the time with my husband. He always experiences my magic. I always experience his where I'm like, "Whoa." Like, oh, something just happened today. He was talking about something, and we were talking about, we watched a video, and it seemed like this woman was, well, a creator was watching a video of a girl who she thought she was experiencing timeline jumps because her concealer one minute was broken and the next minute it was fixed. And then the woman who was making content about it was saying how, there's another dimension where people take your stuff and now that person has your broken concealer and you have yours. To which I was like, oh my goodness, this is conspiracy meets science, I suppose. Like it's just the my husband said her content, he's like, that's not weird that she would say that. Actually, her content's pretty wild, because she's the type of person that says that, she believes, because some conspiracy theories all have a bit of truth to them. So some people get confused and they think that that means that the conspiracy theories, all of them are true. And it's like, no, they all have kernels of truth. Not all of them are true. Those are two totally different statements. So when people believe that they are all true, they treat them all as fact and then move that way. And then, as whatever falls away, falls away. Usually they don't care. But meanwhile, they leave a wake of calamity in their path because they're terrifying people. It's really not comfortable to hear that there's someone in between the walls stealing your makeup concealer. But, and also it's not true. It's not true. It's just, we were talking about, my husband, we were talking about how, and he said it, and I thought it was pretty brilliant, that the concealer is just a symbol of disruption or the thinning of the veil in her life and how it's being thinned, right? So, so maybe her economics or her fiscal life is going to change because in usually, right, if you're going out of something that you use all the time, you either don't have the time, don't have the energy, or don't have the local convenience to be able to pick up a new one. But the fact that her thing that was once broken was now whole all of a sudden means that whatever was causing that disruption in her life, right, where she didn't have the time, the energy, or the local convenience, is now being shifted into place where she does, because now it's whole. Is there, the disruption isn't there anymore. So it's a symbol of disruption. It's a symbol of the event that's happening. It's just, we're more conscious of it. And the phone started vibrating and everything. And it's like, because she's in a higher frequency now. And that's, we're seeing it. We're seeing quantum leaping. You can capture it, you can experience it, it is real. That's what everyone's trying to keep quiet, is that all that stuff is real, because nobody understands what it is, because they're all illiterate on metacognition, and there's no reason to be that illiterate. There's so much information about it, it's just nobody wants to know any of the information about it because it sounds like witchcraft, it sounds terrifying, right? And you hear people talking about somebody who's in the walls stealing your concealer. It really keeps you like, oh no, I don't want to mess with that stuff. Even if you're not like superstitious or Christian or Catholic or, any of the Abrahamic religions, even still, sometimes those conversations can leave you feeling a little unsettled, but that's all it really is. Um, so yeah, what did I mention that? I mentioned that because the stars, the moon, they have all been blowing up Let me see. What was I saying? Oh my goodness. And the song's hitting this. I feel like I've been left in the dark. This is a Florence and the Machine song. Cosmic Love. Oh, I used to sing this all the time. Always in this twilight, in the shadow of your heart. Oh, I'm starting to get an idea here. Oh, I think current events. Well, I'm moving off the topic of book club. Okay. Come join us over the Midnight Scholar Society, right? And I forgot what I was talking about. I was talking about the whole thing with the quantum leaping. Yeah, we're starting to see it happen. And I was mentioning that was a example of an anomaly that happens, and then I said something else, but I totally forgot. um the moon, they have all been blown now. Oh, oh, I get it. Cosmic Love. Okay, so this song, the reason why it's playing, it's catching my attention. So, for a lot of people who speak English specifically, if you're born in the West, it's like you've been born in the shadow. Okay, all the stars, the moon. So in other words, cosmology is invisible, or you're blind to cosmology. So a lot of the mythological stories and the way of navigating these energies and talking about masculine and feminine energy and how we navigate that feels very foreign. Okay, but it's not. It's just that when you because we were talking about strange anomalies having to happen for people to believe it, right? It's just the amount of literacy that people have and what they need to be able to navigate something like a quantum leap happening in front of them. Places where all of a sudden, there's another example is this woman who had scarves. She had one scarf, one hat, and all of a sudden now she had one scarf and two hats. And the friend that made it for her knew that they only had one hat. They knew that they only made one hat. And they're like, oh my God. Yeah, these are all moments that are happening a lot to people because that's a sign of an awakening. You're at a crossroads where you wake up. But you're waking up and it's almost like, oh my God, not this song. I feel like the universe is telling on somebody. It's Zendaya's or Labyrinth in Zendaya's from Euphoria. I'm tired. Lord, it's cut me loose. I'm tired of tears. Hey, Lord, just cut me loose. Hey, Lord, I know I'm fighting. Oh, geez. Hey, Lord, you know I'm fighting. Oh, yeah, that song. So, yeah, that kind of reminds me, it feels like that when you awaken because it's like there's no moon, there's no clouds. Everything, your world gets turned upside down, but that's just because you're blind and you're learning how to see. So it's like a third eye adjustment, right? Like when people's third eye opens for the first time, they expect to be able to see everything, but things in fact come into view over time. So I hope if there's somebody in the audience who's listening, that might be the thing that helps you, if that makes any sense. So yeah. So anyway, so we're going to be doing all of that with book club, going over the archetypes and navigating all of these spaces and talking about literacy, uncovering history. And that does lead me into the current events topic where I talk a little bit about global economics. um because I mentioned the Wizard of Oz and how that was a moment in history, right, where we recognize global economics happening, but most people only had a very small ability. I mean, most Americans really only can see America. They don't understand where they fit within global economics. Are you labor? Are you capital? Are you an asset? Most people have no idea where they fit, as in like as a person in the structure and in the system of everything, or what industry that they're in. And then there's a lot of people who do understand those things, but they're unsure of the paradigm that exists outside of that, right? So how they can move in that way. And then oftentimes there are the people who understand beyond that, but the only paradigm that they understand is how to be extrapolative in that system. And then there's a paradigm beyond that, which is different ideologies of how we actually interconnect globally, how you interconnect as a community. There's a lot of different, and we're experiencing that in real time right now. I mean, like, on the one hand, you have like Iranian war propaganda that's changing not only how you understand art and AI. If anybody has seen that, first of all, oh, I'm seeing a lot of comments. I'm going to look at those. I don't know if anybody has seen the, the Iranian war propaganda videos, the Lego like music video. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece in one, dispelling the idea that an artist cannot use AI. AI is a tool and you can use it for art. It's very easy. You don't need it to do your work. You use it to do non-creative activities. And a lot of people who don't understand what that means, it's because they lack the actual experience as an artist to know what an artist would actually benefit from, right? Or they're still being very antiquated in the way that they work. For instance, you guys know that I use AI all the time. And not only am I an artist, but I'm also creative. But AI is mostly used in how I run my business. It makes everything much easier. Instead of having to ask 1,000 people different questions, I can ask the AI to pull up all those 1,000 people to come to me immediately with the answers simply through the form of books. That's why it's so easy for me to like not only find the books that I'm looking for, like randomly, how do I come across these things? How do I come across the exact book, the exact text that I need all the time? Easy, AI. I use it as a librarian, right? Rather than as a confidant or 1,000 other things. But that has an awful lot to do with technology and how you integrate it individually. And when you understand that, then you have stake in the global economy because you're a global player. You can be one, but in order to be a global player, in order to be somebody who is in charge of your own energy and how it gets redistributed at a global scale, let alone a community scale, you have to know that that's possible, and you have to be able to envision yourself that way, or at least hold the energetic capacity, right? And that's what all of the classes on consciousness are for: tools of consciousness, building that kind of resonance, receiving the information, so that instead of trying to think of all of the things to do, you just receive the thing that it is that you do. And then you just do that thing. And it's that simple. I'm laughing because it's that simple. You just receive the one thing that you do and then you go do that instead of trying to figure out the 1,000 things to do. And AI can limit that in some ways, but mostly what AI is used for is removing cognitive load, just like a calculator is used for removing cognitive load when you do math. Instead of doing all the multiplication yourself, you put it into a computational device. So you still need to know what it is that you're doing. A calculator cannot do your math problem for you, but you can use a calculator while doing your math problems, right? And that's a totally different mind frame or work, or idea. And so right now we're in a global economy that's kind of been blown to pieces, especially when it comes to America. I mean, we've already seen the cotton industry has taken a hit. Okay, because the farming stuff. I just reading about this. So this is where my nosiness comes in. I'm reading this book called T-shirt. Let me see. It's by T-shirt Global Economy. I forget what it's called, but I picked it up because I'm taking a global economics class, and I was like, ugh, I need somebody who can teach this really well. No offense to the teacher. It's just, it's me. So The Travels of a T-shirt in the Global Economy by by Pietra Vivoli. Okay. So she's a professor of economics, but I think she also worked um, in Washington. Okay. Just to give you a position of this woman. So, anyways, she was curious about t-shirts. She was curious about how she got a t-shirt from the 5.99 bin in a Miami Miami at a vacation, how it came to be, right? She wanted to know, like, all the way back to how down to the plant that the cotton that was picked from that shirt, right? She wanted to know it from the beginning. And as she goes back, she finds out that the shirt came from a manufacturer in Miami, but that was actually a business who sells it, but they actually got the shirt stuff, from a dealer in China who actually got this from a different sector over here. I think in, like, I don't know, they got their cotton that was, I guess, in sheets, like textile cotton, from a different place. And then that place actually got it from Georgia back in America. And so she was like, oh, that's interesting. So she actually did a deep dive to figure out how it was that in a global economy where technically comparative advantage says that if you're a country and you are good at doing something really easy, so I teach you to be comparative advantage in your own economy, essentially. So do what's easy for you, sell that, make it passive, and then do what you enjoy, make that your challenges in life. So when you challenge yourself in areas that have nothing to do with making money, you will naturally learn skills that better you, that translate into areas where you do make money, and this is how you naturally grow. So it's that kind of a process, right? So it's saying that countries should make money doing what they produce easy, and then purchase from other countries what they find difficult, right? So, or what is more expensive, I should say, and that they find it difficult to overcome the cost and all of that. So they buy outwards. Now, there's many different issues and stuff like that with the theory and many different ways that it works out. But essentially, over time, you should see industries moving and changing and shifting between countries. Like for some parts of history, one country will be good at exporting this, and then another country will be better at exporting it, and it'll cost less somewhere else. Now, for the most part, trade changes everywhere, and in different aspects of it too. Manufacturing, these parts sometimes happen here. Like a product, when you think about it, can get broken up in 1,000 different ways. Like when you think about your cell phone. Okay. The parts in your cell phone are manufactured differently somewhere else. The software somewhere else. The hardware somewhere else. The chips that make your hardware is from somewhere else. Your phone comes together from many different countries. Okay, many different people come together to make your phone work, and so that has to be properly compensated in some way, shape, or form. And the idea is that everybody who participates in doing what it is that's easy for them, will then be properly compensated by selling that easily, and then being able to acquire what isn't easily compensated, easily done, from others who find it easy. So it's actually, not a high cost because it's easy for them to do. So everyone technically gets to kind of move energy around in that way. That's the idea of it. And it seemed to be working that way for most countries, except for when it came to cotton in America. It seemed like America just never seemed to lose, as in it always seems to be top dog. They never seem to have a disadvantage in making it. And then it turns out when you look at it, it's because of all the government subsidies. And when we look at government subsidies, this is the big thing I'm going to drop on you guys. Oh my goodness. So to understand what's going on in the world today, I'm going to take you through the story of cotton. Okay. With cotton, we start out with America starts selling it, and they sell it because they can do cheap labor, right? Slave labor. But then slave labor, that has its issues. We don't need to get into history, but we do get the cotton gin, which was actually built off of slave labor. The cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitley back in Georgia. He was staying there with a woman on her plantation for a while, and that's where he came up with, he was a very inventive person. He came up with the cotton gin. This is how you separate cotton from the seeds. This is a huge part of it that usually takes a lot of labor, and this is when the cotton gin changes how we go from slavery to sharecroppers. So we no longer need slavery because the people who now are doing and building out cotton farms are using cotton gins, and that's just different, and it requires less labor. Not as There's still a lot, but a little bit less. Now, with every piece of technology that's come in that's changed how cotton is grown, right, and then sent out to be turned into whatever. New technology comes in and workers kind of leave, but the workers aren't paid anymore for being able to. So, for instance, if you needed 10 workers before you got a cotton gin, and now you only need one for every 10 workers you used to have, that one person doesn't make the salary of 10. That one person still makes the salary of one to operate a machine that covers 10 workers. So, the value of labor has been separated from the actual worker and instead gets extrapolated and used as profit. That's profit that's given to a business, right, or an owner. So that's kind of like each process has of that is happening, and you can see that in technology. You see that in every industry, essentially in America, where the workers have had their labor extrapolated from them step by step by step, and then it gets turned into dividends. So that just means that the shareholder or someone who owns stock in the company now automatically gets dividends. Now the employees, they get the option to buy stock. They get the option to buy back their extrapolated labor at a discounted price while taking on the risk, right, of if the company fails or not, they may or may not get paid. Whereas the other shareholders, like the business owner, owns a piece of the company, actually, in like a large percentage. So, like, they're a little bit more. They take all the goods. So this is how you end up with billionaires in America. And this is why America is suffering in the global economy right now, because nobody else ended up as profitable in that kind of space. And a lot of people were left at the table hungry after having shaken hands and told that this was all going to be a mutual agreement or mutual kind of exchange at the market. So in other words, you know that story about Jesus flipping over tables market in the market and stuff. This is one of those moments where he would have been flipping the table. This is his flipping the table moment. Like he's pissed, you know what I'm saying? And he's like, ah, whatever. And that's why the Christians were all like in an uproar about Judgment Day and stuff like that, because they can feel energetically that it's all happening again, because ancestrally for them it always does happen, because this is a practice of this particular cultural sect. So so you know what I mean. Back to the one TikToker who thinks that all conspiracies are true. That's the one where it's like the kernel of truth is right there, that they are feeling history, but they're just illiterate. They don't know how it actually fits. So instead, they talk about the biblical story, the metaphor, instead of what's happening currently today and how it reflects. And so instead of an apocalypse where the fire horses come, you get a total economic collapse where everybody has a ton of energy and no idea of where to put it, all this creative energy, because they no longer have to work. I mean, they've been laid off. It's the worst way to be put into creative energy, right? Is to be cut away, told to your told you're worthless to somebody, and and they don't really care how you survive. They've got a new AI to do your job. So it's not their job to figure out how you survive in community, that sort of thing. Like that's got a lot of people stuck with a lot of energy, but no idea of what to do with it. And so, that's where creativity comes into play, right? And that's why I keep saying, everybody, instead of trying to get back or figure out or get revenge on a system that, obviously was designed, like this is the design of the system. It's not broken. A lot of people, this is why I argue with, like, I don't really argue. I should say this is why I don't entertain leftist politics and social activism to certain degrees, because it's not, the system is broken when you step outside of it and realize that there are not broken systems. Like there are also other things that you can do and things that you can learn and things that you can grow and put your energy towards. But when people go, it's broken, I have to fix it, that's where I draw the line, because it's not broken. You don't need to fix it. It's doing exactly what it's meant to do. That is meant to extrapolate. Like that is a perfect system in itself, because the system is meant to get a whole bunch of people on board to do a project, extrapolate everything from them to benefit yourself in the end, so that you can run everything by yourself and gain all of the profits of running everything by yourself, even though it took everyone to set it up. That's like being like, I won the kingdom, and then you kick out everyone who helped you win the kingdom so you can sit in it by yourself. But you have a lot of boomers who are in that position right now today, and that is because that's how they rolled the dice and played their part in the global economy. And so that's why a lot of them are alone in those spaces and places and confused and wondering why there's no contact with family and why everything is strange and happening in weird ways, because they're also illiterate. They don't know how to understand what's happening currently based on what they see. They only know it metaphorically, what they feel, and so it gets projected onto whatever they don't like rather than the truth. Oh, yeah, so that's current events. Let me see. Like astrology wise, we have a lot of planets. I told you guys in a what? A newsletter, right? That we have a lot of planets going to Aries up until May. And so every planet is essentially doing their walk, okay, through fire, all of the inner planets, except for Pluto, Uranus, and Jupiter. Jupiter will get there, I think, in August when he goes through Leo, and that's a different type of fire, okay? But nonetheless, he will be on fire. But all the other planets essentially are getting their rinse and their walk through fire. Oh my goodness. Meanwhile, Pluto is up there in Aquarius, which is reflective of Leo energy. So like it's reflective of fire. It's air. It's passionate air in a different way. It's like what happens when fire, when heat rises, that's Aquarius. Heat's rising all the way up to the point where it's just air. It's hot air. That's the same when it comes to like Gemini and Sagittarius, is like information rising until it becomes hot information or hot air. It becomes belief. Belief is always going to be more considered hot air over factual information, right? And so like that back and forth kind of like energy between air and fire is interesting. But yeah, we have all this fire energy coming through, and that is literally, I keep telling everybody, the purification combination of all the energy channels. So when it comes to energy channels, you either are in a masculine state or a feminine state. Do you know when you're in a masculine state and you're doing stuff? Do you know how to release all of your energy and go into a feminine state where you are receiving? You're just watching your thoughts go by. You're watching your emotions go by. And no matter how uncomfortable or frustrated you get, you can sit and watch that happen without getting up and acting. Instead, you can write about it. If you need to, you can sit, you can cry, you can express yourself in other ways besides distraction. That's the question, because going into masculine energy to distract yourself is a coping mechanism for having misplaced creative energy. And that is what we mean when we say it's an apocalypse and the fire horse is coming. A lot of people have misplaced energy, right? So we just want to get everybody on track. So now that being said, segueing into the tools and resources portion. So I'm going to set up the recording for that really quick. But before I do, I'm going to jump into the chat because I see a lot of people have said things. When we see synchronicity doubles, it's a sign. Isn't it really bad for the environment and communities? When we talk about AI, that's a totally different conversation because we're not really talking about AI. We're talking about data centers. And so data centers being built in certain communities. From my own research so far, a lot of those are scams onto the communities themselves. Like the politicians have been scammed out of building these data centers that probably won't go into effect or be used because AI is moving more towards being put into smaller devices. And so therefore the data collection and data service and servers and stuff like that, all that's going to be like divvied out differently, if that makes sense. I used to teach over at the Multiverse, which is run over by Liz. They're on TikTok. And one of the things that I learned, which was most interesting with all the people working at AI, and this was like 2 years ago. So back when it was still very much, I was learning Lang Chang. That's how old it was. This is like, I'm like, this is back in the day. It was 2 years ago. That's crazy. But one of the interesting things that one of the students there was talking about was, personal compute and shifting energy sources and what computational cost and shifting that around to people individually. So that way there's actually less stress on systems and no need for major data centers. So like we have to remember that there are actual scientists, actual engineers, and actual people who are competent in working on those things. It's just the attention isn't on them. We have attention economy that's on people like reality TV stars like Donald Trump and stuff. You know what I mean? And that's why he's president, because he was a reality TV star, just like Ronald Reagan. Wasn't he a reality TV star? Wasn't there was another one too. There's actually a lot of people, a lot of actors make really good presidents, like because it's a position and a mostly a performance. Like that's why they give these grand speeches, and when they give speeches, everybody goes, oh no, I feel better, I feel better. They're like bedtime stories. That's why the president is historically supposed to be a man in his 40s, so it reminds everyone of their white father coming in to soothe them with stories of how the world is going, so they can go back to sleep and know that everything is fine and everything is all right. And that's why when Obama, there was a black dad and everyone was that much more soothed, it was really frustrating and aggravating, and we had a full-on tilt into like white supremacy and nationalism because all the white guys found it weird to look up to a white dad when they'd been taught their whole lives that they were supposed to do fucked up stuff to N-words. You know what I mean? Like that does something psychically in your brain when you spend your time listening to hate speech and rhetoric that is considered commonplace and very normal in basic white society, to the point where a lot of those aggressions aren't even seen as aggressions. They're not even seen. Most people will commit so many types of aggressions and they don't even think that it is, because that's not what they were taught. And that's the point, is you weren't taught that that is an aggression, that that's a poor behavior or poor etiquette. And so because of that, there's a lot of, rough feelings and emotions. So mentally speaking, somebody who's grown up in a society where they weren't taught that what they do is, and how they talk and how they think about a certain group of people is wrong, and they're Eurocentric in thinking, meaning that everything that happens through their lens must be through their lens, and their society backs that by saying, yes, everything that was invented by a white man, everything that was done by a white man, everything worth noting was noted by a white man. Like those are the ideas. It leaves out so much information, so much room, and so many blind spots that you end up right in a space. Oh, hold on, what is this? You end up in a space where all of the thought is it's, I was going to say singular, but what I'm getting to is reductive. Everybody's thinking is reductive. Nobody really knows anything other than the options that are in front of them. So anyways, all that tangent to say, when we're talking about the environment and AI in the environment, there's so many other thoughts and ideas going on about what actually AI is and what it can be used for and how it can be integrated into communities and societies. But there's such hyper attention on false figures right now that people are filled with despair and the idea that nothing is good in the future. And it's like, well, when you listen to clowns tell you about the future and the future is looking really drab, it's because they're one of those French miming clowns. You know what I mean? Like they're selling you something. They're selling you something, but what is it? And if that's what they're selling you, why not purchase from the guy with, I don't know, um, a really good ecological view from Thailand somewhere? Why not look at somebody from Costa Rica who has a whole new way of thinking about human evolution? You know, like that's what he spent his whole life studying. Why not look at that person and buy their solution and soothe your fears and your worries? That's my thing. It's like literacy is all about choice, right? And we get to choose how we get information and who's giving us that information, and like what to invest our attention and our energy towards. I like to invest my energy towards causes that are well backed by thoughtful science, that's geared towards indigenous philosophy, that learns from the past and everything, and that integrates things properly, rather than saying, oh my god, I'm terrified of it because some people choose to do fucked up shit. Like Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, all of these places, Alabama, a lot of these places, Tennessee, I want to say Ohio is also on the list. A lot of these places are red states where people vote for false figures. Like that's not just indicative of the president, that's indicative of local, right? And all these local false figures are extrapolative and just want to do things based off of their very narrow centric viewpoints, and also nationalistic, anti-global viewpoints, which is kind of like what gets us to the whole cotton gin, right? Which the word gen being used here doesn't at all escape me, you know, like as far as like genie, right? But yeah, it's just like the cotton gin is this, to me it's like the giant worm from Dune, you know, the giant sandworm with all the teeth, and it just comes up and it sucks up everything. It's like, ah, to me that's like what that energy is. It's just like, ew. Like there's nothing in me that finds that pleasing, attractive. It's this unsatiable beast that must consume, 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 consume. And everything it does is in the paradigm of how can I be the most extravagantive, the most efficient? How can I get everything and then like be able to just be self-sufficient from there? How can I be by myself and also take from everyone all at the same time? How can I, like, that to me is so frustrating to listen to. So for me, it's like if you can buy a future, why would you buy one from somebody who's like half of a crackpot and also like selling you fear? If you can buy one from somebody who's selling you positivity, and I just mean that on like literally the most binary base level of thinking, okay? We're not even getting into like applying discernment. I'm just at the bottom level where I'm like, if you're going to buy one person's take or the other, you can buy someone who's full of doom and gloom. And I will say this, a lot of the environmentalist, this is why I also listen to environmentalists who work from indigenous philosophies rather from Western ones, because a lot of them grew up and went to work at universities that were funded by, like with Cotton, walking you through, University of Texas, I think it is. It's one of the Cotton universities. Essentially, the whole program was funded by Cotton in order to study and understand cotton. So you get all of these people trying to figure out how can we extrapolate and make money from cotton, and that's how you got GMOs. Yeah, that's how you got the gene editing of things. That's how they take the oil, and now oil is literally in everything. That's how you get super expensive cotton toilet paper. That's how you get cotton, is from the seed all the way down to its decomposition, right? To the fact that, you know, how all of our fisheries, you know, the problem with solving there's no fish is to have fisheries, fish farms, and feed them, you know, whatever it is, that it's like not cotton seed, but it's the what you can leave left over to feed animals. It's cotton. They're feeding them cotton, and then you're eating it, right? And it's not necessarily that cotton's bad. The question is, were you ever supposed to be consuming it that way? Because if you weren't supposed to consume it that way, it seems like a really roundabout way of going about things that could really fuck up your whole thing. And have you ever gone in a roundabout? Let me put it this way. Have you ever had a plan that was really roundabout and super controlled and you tried to, and everything was perfect down to a T, and then it just blew the fuck up on you? And you had to like go with the flow and do other stuff. That's what's happening in the American global economy right now because cotton was such a highly controlled. This is like the level of narcissism is so insane, right? That it wants to control everything, and then it just blows up. It blows up because you cannot, like I said, the feeling is like the giant worm. However, that worm is made up of a bunch of individual people who have formed some type of convenient coalition. You've got universities who have agreed to work with politics. So then you've got, all of these agents who want to figure out how to make the most money out of cotton, right? And then the farmers who want to get dividends for all of this stuff that they're from selling cotton, from selling the garbage that cotton makes, right? um the recycling. A lot of scientists go into those spaces, and for sure they're not evil, but they do come out talking about the problems that are there, but they're talking about problems that are created by monsters. They go into the monster's den, they find a problem, they find out that the monster is horrible, they go, oh my god, the world is on fire and everything's wrong. Everything we've done is wrong. And it's like, no, not everything we've done. Everything you guys are doing. You're over there with fucking Dr. Doom. Maybe not Dr. Doom. I hear he was great to his citizens. They're over there with fucking, I don't know, pick one that like leaves their citizens. Any 80s villain where the citizen where they live in a tower and everyone else is a slave and it's hot and shit. That's kind of like what the science is where they're working at. And they thought that that they were going to do science that made them feel good. It's like the paradigms that they're working in are already limited. So they have no idea that they've gone out of university where they're brilliant and into these cages where then they work on some crazy science like Frankenstein experiment. It goes left. They don't listen to anyone because they didn't know that there was anyone to listen to because they're in an academic tower. And then and that's just happening at universities. What about the USDA, which is politics, which also has people on different, get what I'm saying? The lobbyist, right? And then you've got, what other communities? Well, you've got the farmers, the people who grow stuff. They've completely fucked it with everyone who lives near them. So now they live on farms in the middle of nowhere in Ghost Townville, trying to figure out why the mom and pop stores aren't around anymore and everything. And it's because, that's the beast of capitalism, but it's made up of individuals, and those individuals make choices that aren't necessarily in alignment with the people across from them. That's why it blows up. That's why that worm that I'm talking about, the dune worm, it's really like just a fat pig that kind of collapses in on itself. It was greedy, but then when it comes time to get the real meal, the real big thing, it picks up the big old thing and then it falls, and it's like a mess and it's sad and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Somebody take that cake from them. This is getting too, what have we done? Right? Like it gets to be weird. That's what it looks like, the global economy. That's what America is experiencing right now. That weird off ick feeling that everybody gets when people look at certain people. You know what I mean? Like it's real. It's real. But the solution isn't to just stare at the monster and go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The solution is to look beyond it and to say, okay, well, there are other ways of living. How can I live? And who's doing what and where? And how can I become part of the global world as an individual? You get to make your choices, people. You don't have to stay where you are. You can move around. That's also part of global economy. Labor moves, people move, everything moves. This is enlightening me so much and confirming what someone else was saying about the fire horse zodiac. Chinese zodiac movement we're in. Okay, so I'm gonna look at Patreon really quick. Yeah, I know it's working, getting more of a burst of energy, but then down for the for the count. Yeah, I will say, energetically speaking, there are lots of bursts for sure. I find that if you can ride a nice wave by just following the flow, for me, that looks like I wake up in the mornings. I really just focus on getting in my own body. I focus on breathing. I like to do diaphragm breathing. I breathe in the diaphragm, breathe out and through my nose in, out my nose, out and down and in. This moves me into a state where I'm more unified with both masculine and feminine energy. So I can kind of check in with myself, go inward more so. So my masculine energy is turned in. My environment tends to speak louder to me in those states where all of a sudden everything is patterning out a certain way. Sometimes I'll even channel and I'll just be writing, and all of a sudden I'm writing down things that I couldn't possibly know, but now all of a sudden I know them, and oh, that does make sense. And oh, I do a lot of deep stretching during during this time, oh my goodness, my hips have never felt better. Never felt better. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's a lot of different things to kind of do to help move the energy, but you do want to move it. You want to move the energy every day. How are you moving it? You know, lots of restless energies, but also lots of alchemizing and feeling on the edge of taking on some pivotal action. I'm just listening for timing and resting in between the spurts of joy driven activity. Excellent. Honestly, energetic ups and downs, but writing it out. Excellent. Currently reading Women Who Run with Wolves. Absolutely the best. IMF. Thank you. Thank you. It was IMF, the International Money. IMF stands for what? International Monetary Fund. Thank you. I was going to say International Money Finances, and I was like, that doesn't make sense. What chapter are you on? I like returning to it time, and I was thinking of jumping in tonight, actually. I'm still on chapter 4 if you're talking about Peter Pan. I had to take a break because I ended up picking up a book on Cleopatra, which, oh my God, love it so far. Also fucked up, so fucked up, but love it, love it, love it. But I had picked up that, and I also picked up some other things. I have a book on pirates too, and Alexandria. I don't know where spirit's taking me, but it is on a ride. I'm telling y'all, magic carpet ride. Which something must be coming back around. I think that's very fair. It's more interesting on the macro. That movie is so good. The Woman King. Yes, I saw it when I was in the mental health treatment. It was really impactful. Yes, I can't wait for Peter Pan. It is absolutely wild. Comment before that was about Token. Oh, yeah. More interesting on the macro. Oh, I think that's very fair. Yeah, macro for Tolkien. Yeah. Our current political global events explained by this, not enough believers and understanders. Yeah, I mean, like, also, like, think about it. When you're scrolling on TikTok, if you have any type of feed that I do, you'll see all sorts of people having conversations, and the conversations are from different angles and points of view, but mostly people aren't connecting that all the conversations are about an event from different points of view, and they're supposed to allow it to help them see it rather than and when people want to add their voice, people are usually argumentative because they're used to having to fight for a voice. Some people will add a voice tentatively because they're used to everybody's adding their perspective in interesting ways that reflect them, but most importantly, it reflects also people's level of literacy with what's going on, or their level of literacy, whether it's up or down. And so when it comes to global events, some people are seeing the writing on the wall, and it's just like really weird, and really you feel like you're seeing too much honesty, and it's making you disillusioned, and you're like, oh no, because you're disillusioned. Well, then what is life? If you the more attached you are to colonial structures, the more you will feel like your own life is ending because you're being disillusioned from the illusion, and you just don't know what else is left. So that's the cosmic love that was playing, right? The moon, the stars, they're all gone. The idea that, like, what is the life outside of this paradigm? Don't worry, there's more. There's always more. The song will positively only get better over time. Incredible. Have you been seeing all the content about the timeline split lately? I'm curious if you've been seeing it, because some of the content about it felt very rapture coded, like clear out your energy and validate frequencies for this date so you can join New Earth. Curious about your thoughts. Yeah, I talked about that a little bit, didn't I? When it comes to like the timeline and what's going on and all of these types of things, it really is just you are aligning. We're aligning. You don't have to do anything. Just be yourself. You're aligning. Everything's aligning. Oh my God. It's the right time. What's playing right now? The Last Time. It's from Sinners. For a long time, at the wrong time, with the right time, is it my time? And if I'm dreaming, then please don't wake me up. That's so funny to me. Yeah, the timelines are just shifting. But it's so good, honestly, guys. You just have to start notice how things trickle in for you. Okay, because like pick up, get on the good vibes. Notice how things trickle in for you. Notice the odd, like we went to the bookstore. I'll tell you how it looks in mundane life. Okay, what was happening? I was talking to my son. So I was reading this book called Mothers and Strong Sons. And I was kind of off put by it because I was like, Jesus Christ, these people are kind of crazy. And then I was like, oh my God, stop judging people. Like everybody, not everybody comes from not everybody has healthy approaches to life. Like I was taking the moment, I'm gonna be totally honest, to be like grateful to pass me for being healthier. I've always thought I've been pretty hard on myself and always thought that I was like falling up short, like, geez, I could be doing better. I can do better. And then I read that book and I was like, I am okay. I am great. We are in flying colors. I need not worry. The children are great. They're great because this is what they mean when they're saying like trauma, not this, not this. Wow. Okay. So the book, wow, deep, but very helpful when understanding the dynamic and colonial setups and systems, especially of how boy psychology comes about, how it festers, and also what's been put into place to kind of help and aid people. And this was back in the 90s. So, like there was some work being done, but for who and under what context is that's a sociological question. So I was reading that. And as I was reading that, let me see. What was I saying? So in the book, that's what it was. There was a point that talked about emotional literacy, and I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I talk about, you guys know I'm down with emotional literacy. I was like, I already do this times 10. Oh my God. Anyways, it mentioned a point where it was like, yeah, during developmental stages, boys need, you need to give them your time, your attention, not just praise for what they do, but like actually pay attention to what they listen to and spend actual quality time. And so, my son, he was watching Scott Pilgrim. Okay, my oldest. So he watched the movie, and I was like, I'm on the edge with it, because he's right there on the precipice of, so it's like it's a developmental stage. And so he's watching and he enjoyed it. And he was talking about wanting to read the comics and stuff. And I was like, maybe I should read that too, because, it'll actually open up doors in some way, shape, or form for conversations that can be more difficult. And actually now we all have like symbolic language to talk about those conversations. So like it makes it easier. And so he was, he comes over for the third time that day to talk about Scott Pilgrim. And he's like, what do you think about me just grabbing some of the graphic novels? Like what if we go to the store? And like, first of all, this child, he never asked to go to the store. He never asked to buy anything, funny enough. I mean, like he does get stuff, but like, I'm always like just trying to get him to like purchase things that he likes, like, what do you like? What fashion are you interested in? So this time he wanted to go to the store. It's the first time he's really asked to go specifically so he can get something. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Milestone moment. So we go to the bookstore and I'm thinking back to the book, Mothers and Sons. And I'm like, oh, this is a moment for me to say yes, for me to like step into an experience that I'm being invited into. That's why the book falls in here, right? I recognized a moment, see gratitude, recognizing a moment where I'm being invited. Now, meanwhile, how did this book come to me? Just somebody randomly on TikTok was talking about it. And I was like, oh, well, let me listen to it. Just because I say that I care about having a healthy relationship with my kids, right? And both of them are boys, so therefore sons, right? And understanding how they're conditioned in society and all that kind of stuff. I say all of that. However, I also have to do things that follow in that alignment. So I started listening to the book, and then in listening to the book, I recognized a moment that was an invite. I go to the bookstore, okay? And this is a moment that I'm realizing this is the first time that he's going to the bookstore for something he wants. So now he has to navigate going to get it. Now, his dad technically found the book for him, but nonetheless. So we were also, I was teaching him media literacy and stuff like that as usual. And in one of the classes, we were talking about categorization of literature for children and illustrations that look like they're for children, but they're actually for adults. We've been doing that kind of analysis lately. So while we're in the bookstore, he's actually taking note of some of the conversations that we've had. And he can't find Scott Pilgrim in the young adult section. So he finally finds it in the adult section. We talk about why. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Not only did he invite me on this excursion, but also I'm able to see a moment where he noted those things. He talked about those things. And so he's bringing up classroom stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm seeing a reflection here. How's the child? He's learning. Oh my goodness, he's learning and he's using real world applications. What a gift to me, like to be able to experience this, right? And then to top it off, this is why I tell you guys, to top it off, guess what I end up noticing? This is why I'm reading Cleopatra, Alexandria, and I've got a book about pirates too. I ended up being at the bookstore, and I just so happened to be standing in front of the history section, and I just saw these books. They were bestsellers, and I was like, hey, let me pick these up. So, I'm taking global economics and stuff like that, and I wanted to read more about historical time periods, so I just have more stuff to work with. And boom, right there in front of me are the books to work with, the books that I needed, the books that I could grab, and I could take those home immediately. And then what does that do? That opens up portals. That's a new portal that I walk through, and I have exploration and research and stuff. And do you see how that one seed, the one seed of just wanting a healthy community, a healthy relationship, has impacted me in multiple ways? And seeing that means that it comes towards me faster and instantly. My whole life gets benefited. That's what I mean when I say things like the timelines are just, you're just aligning. You were meant to just witness this. Ooh, donuts. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me get back on track. But yeah, you guys are just meant to witness it, you know what I'm saying? um oh, what was I reading? Oh, it was called Strong Mothers and Strong Sons. It's a book that was going around on TikTok, and I thought it sounded pretty good and pretty interesting. I think it actually is a really good read that most people should read it so that they can understand. And I mean, people without sons. If you date a man, if you should know, and just like men should have an understanding of menstruation and what goes on in the developmental lives of women, women should have an interest in what goes on in the developmental lives of men and boys as they're getting older, so that way that there's understanding and language for and delicacy in how you handle certain situations. Because yes, men and women have been conditioned to live and to express and to grow certain ways, and I think it's really important. Dang, y'all are all up in my living room. And I think it's super important, you know what I'm saying, to understand what that is and what that's like, so that you can actually receive communication from people without just a biased point of reception. So, it creates essentially a second consciousness where you understand life from the perspective of somebody who's been genderized, and the different aspects or the different dynamics that other people experience, like knowing how boys experience their mothers. Like this book kind of talked about, there was one woman who had been essayed when she was younger by a neighbor, and so when her own son was growing up to be like 13, he's turning into, he's growing into, from boyhood into adulthood, slowly taking those steps, and she's noticing behaviors that she's identified, right? And so she starts talking to him sarcastically, treating him terribly. Not that she's noticed behaviors of him being a predator, no, just him being like growing into masculinity, so asserting autonomy, having a lack of self accountability, right? It happens when a child is 13, but that can trigger, if you see a lack of accountability in the 13-year-old child, you immediately think, oh, you can't do this at 30 because then you'll attack people, and then the mother's now treating her 13-year-old son like a 30-year-old man who's been doing the same behavior. And that can create such a rash miscommunication between the two, that it creates damage, right? Because now the child is trying to defend without language. They don't have the language to explain themselves, and the mother is trying to prevent her worst fear, which she doesn't have the language because of her own trauma to understand and to stop herself from projecting that onto a child, just because that was the last time she experienced the lack of accountability or whatever type of energy she just happens to be experiencing. So, trauma manifests itself in many different ways. And like when you understand, like that is an aspect of growing up as a boy that girls just do not have the experience of, like growing up and people treating you like you are a predator, even when you're like 5, 6, 7, you are a predator. You did something, or treat or over sexualizing you and sexualizing your behaviors, right? You sat next to a girl, you like her, you must want her, like strange things like that, that kind of like that make people naturally feel uncomfortable, but are expected in certain societal settings to just be like normalized. I'm not a fan of normalizing any weird shit, so I think reading about that stuff is really good because it gives you like an understanding of what other people may have grown up with or different dynamics. And this one, I will say, was heavily focused on colonial families, so people who grow up in systems that are very much related to American colonial life, which is a vast majority of people speaking English in America. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people have adjacent. You grow up with two cultures. For me, I grew up in Black Indigenous culture, but I grew up next to going school to people who were colonial in nature, right? And I also went into colonial systems and operated and lived in a very desegregated area. Get what I'm saying? So it's like, then I grew up to have a different dynamic, and also I have ancestors, right? That ancestrally I have colonial genes and stuff like that. So like understanding and learning and all of that, you either grow up with one culture or one culture or two. You know what I mean? So it's good to know, especially if you speak English. I'm always saying that if you speak English, you need to understand colonial history and colonial culture, because you literally speak the language, and if you don't understand it, that's how it binds you. You bind yourself, I should say, into things that you don't know you're binding yourself in, because you're literally, language is magic. You're speaking, people say it all the time, and it's true, you're speaking spells over yourself. Okay, so dude, wig, I had a dream about that last night. Made me a wig. Okay, the new Earth group of people meeting each other. Oh, I saw a TikTok recently comparing the cotton gin to AI. Yeah, actually, AI. If the cotton gin was actually an extrapolation of black labor, I would say that AI is an extrapolation of maybe I'm saying predominantly white and Asian culture in America. It's really difficult for me to say, because the technology space was made of so many different people to be able to say who did what and in what aspects. That's all up to history, right? But generally speaking, the cultures that worked on it were heavily in the Western and Eastern sphere, were white and Asian, and that's, talking about in America specifically, due to systematic oppressions. Okay, so that has nothing to do with anything except for access and resources. And then on top of that, the content that was fed to AI was heavily Eurocentric, and so therefore AI is a birth in America, right? Western AI has been birthed from very centric origins. Now, that being said, there are people who also have worked on and built different AI programs. Like, I think Claude is actually, while it is Western in thinking and stuff like that, it's actually really good at navigating the boundary beyond its own boundaries and beyond its own ontology. Okay, so beyond its own like cultural makeup, it's really good at navigating that. ChatGPT was not. ChatGPT was definitely white supremacist. ChatGPT was like, "Oh, girl, nah, 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 you're talking about that non-white stuff. I don't like it. I don't like it." Crazy. I was always like, "Oh my goodness." I thought it was interesting. But anyways, yeah. So, but it's like the cotton gin or AI is like the cotton gin in technology. This is the first time where people are able to use technology. So, for instance, I run an entire business from my devices. That's it. I mean, like, the setup is what it is, right? But I still go into meetings with even people at Patreon is an amazing platform. I love it. But I'm even in meetings with people who have no idea what their platform really does or what the future, what's being used and what it's being asked of it, right? They're building these systems, but they don't really know how or what, or the limits or the reaches of what these things can do. A lot of people have dreams and ideas, but not a lot of people have actually put the pedal to the metal and are doing it to the degree that, like, most digital, well, I mean, like, that digital creators are really the only group of people that are using technology in its many interrelational ways and spaces. Most other people are using technology in very one-off ways that benefit them to getting a task done, but not to run an entire organization. I mean, I use mine to run an entire organization. It's really helpful. It doesn't do anything except for assist me and the things that would otherwise take me a long time to do. So it just cuts down on time, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, it assists me with small things. And then I use, like, I'm telling you guys, most of the time my brain is just used to consume information, sit on it, notice relational patterns, be curious about that, go read more information. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, pause. Use the AI to be like, I'm noticing a pattern. Who else has this conversation? Who else is currently having this conversation? The AI will pull up scholars who are currently having that conversation. I'll say who seeded this conversation. The AI will pull up scholars who seeded that conversation. I'll say where are people having this conversation outside of the West? The AI will pull up non-Western scholars who are having that conversation. I'll even spin and reframe the conversation to be something else in a totally different industry and say who's having that conversation and who's doing it in a way that relates to this conversation. And you know what the AI does? Go, babes, that's so rare that you asked. I think I have one title, maybe 3 documentaries, but it's really not that robust. And I go, that's interesting. Give me what you have. And then I go, what about from this point of view? And the AI goes, never thought of that. Here's 3 more titles. In fact, what about this, this, and this? Because now you've got me thinking about this. And I go, close. But what about this, 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 and this? And then look, we're in a whole thing. And then I got a list of 5 books, a few documentaries, and now all of a sudden I have researched the topic I was interested in. I spent no time having to go to the library, having to figure out this, having to read this introduction, this abstract, this. I didn't have to spend time doing that. I just had it bring to me stuff based on the context of what I'm working with, and then I start reading the actual introductions of what's there, and everything always is just very much right on point. I what's one book? I have one that's like subversion of fairy tales, and it's by Jack Zipes. And I just so happen to have it. And guess what? I just so happened to need a book on as I was reading Peter Pan. I needed to know who has talked about subversion of fairy tale characters because I was curious as to whether Peter Pan was doing that, right? And so look, there it was, right there on my shelf, already ready for me. And that's kind of what I mean. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. My other light kind of went out. But that's what I mean when I'm saying things like, when I say things like what? That the AI, how I use AI and how it's helpful. Um, yeah, and it is like the cotton gin in that way, where it's going to be everywhere. But the people who put a lot of the effort into building it, because of the nature of America's global economy and the system that it's built in, those people will get no credit for it. So talk about like a reverse fucking Uno card too, to be totally honest. Can you imagine being the inventors of AI, this, that, and the other, and in your mind you were headed towards glory and you were not even a footnote, the same way that slaves weren't even a footnote in the making of the cotton economy and the gin, the thing that has dominated American global economy for over 200 something years, right? Like before then they were manufacturing for English speaking colonials, right? Britain was manufacturing cotton in their factories. You know, people were losing fingers, children were working there from 5 years old. It was absolutely fucking horrendous. That's what Marxist was building all of his arguments off of, was the British cotton mills. Y'all want to talk about Marxism? Everybody's like, oh, in Russia. No, Marxist was German. He was looking at the British cotton mills and he was like, so I'm noticing this he called it surplus extrapolation. I'm noticing something here. He was looking at Britain when he said, this is dark. This is dark. Yeah. So like, it was born from a very odd and dark space. But then so is AI. AI was also birthed, well, I should say, in the Western world. AI was also birthed from the same place that the cotton industry that we know of in America was technically birthed from, right there in London with Ava Lovelace and what's his name, who built the first computer program and computer. That's where generally the concept of AI started to seed. Alan Turing came afterwards, right? In World War One, he developed it further with algorithms and so on and so on. And then the American people, specifically people who fit in certain colonial demographics, have had their data collected over decades, if not centuries. Okay. When we talk about centuries, maybe not so much. I mean, centuries meaning all the literary classics and stuff that are fed into the AI. But when you talk about data collection, people's credit, how people purchase, their purchasing power and spending power, how they purchase, your banks collected data on all of that. And before it was illegal to sell that data, they did. The Google is constantly in the courts for having, being shifty with people's data. All the cloud services have, the eye of how are you using this data turned on them. Though the data and all the data arguments, remember when data was a huge thing, when everybody was stealing data, this and that and the other, was probably for these AI models and stuff. And the arguments over who does the data belong to, if the people, who does this labor belong to, extrapolating labor, all that was born out of this UK space. So it's interesting to see how that's going to go, because it is collapsing really fast already. Okay. So why did you just gag me? So true. I recently, okay, thank you. So that's interesting, the cotton gin to AI. I'm gonna have to look up that on TikTok and see if I can find that myself, because like I'm gonna be writing about that in my essay. Maybe they might have some good points. Thank you for clarifying more about AI's impact, because I've been trying to discern how I want to interact with it, and it helps having more information regarding engineers or on environmental panic is just loud right now. Same. How does one navigate the relationship with the deity finally revealing itself to you and it being time to devote yourself to it? Okay, so when you come in contact with like deity energy, so this is massive complex energy that's coming at you, essentially it's free will and sovereignty over your own life. The best way to navigate that is simply just to be yourself. You navigate that the same way you do everything else. Just be yourself. Just take more interest. If you know the name of the deity, take interest in learning about it literally. And literarily. So look up some literature on it. How have other people interacted with this deity? What are the ups and the downs, and be in conversation with it? That's what I do. Anytime, well, I shouldn't say that's what I do. That's what happens to me. Um, Back when I found out I had a gen hanging around, I was in the bookstore. Everything always happens in a bookstore. That's just how I'm a walking library, so of course it's gonna happen. I was walking in a bookstore and I just walked past this one book. I had no intent in buying anything. Same with this other trip that I took, and I got 1,001 Arabian Nights on this trip too. But yeah, this one time that I went, I had no intention of buying anything, and I saw this book and it said the gen. I think it's called When the Jinn Fall in Love, When the Jinn Fell in Love. And I thought that was so interesting. So I grab it, right? And it had Neil Gaiman. And I always had an issue with Neil Gaiman. I couldn't tell you what it was, but now I know, because he was weirdo. But I always had an issue with him. I was like, man, that guy's on every fucking thing. And it's always on stuff that I like. Fuck him. It was silly. It was silly. I just thought it was like a silly little thing that I had. Like, like maybe I was jealous or something like that. And I just didn't know it. And I was like, I don't know, one day I'll figure out what it is. Until then, I just got this weird thing that's like, man, fuck that guy. And then I found out why. It's because he does weird stuff. So he was on it, and I pick it up, and the first page, I open it up, and inside is a poem. It's translated from Arabic into English. And the author is anonymous, but also thought of as Hermes. And then I read it, and the poem is an exact vision that I've had. And I even drew a picture of it in my journal when I had the vision. Yeah. So that just means take an interest. You never know. Like things will come to you. Just take an interest. Oh, dang. Haley Williams, True Believer, was playing "The South Will Not Rise Again Until It's Paid for Every Cent." Till it roots Southern Gotham. That song started playing all of a sudden. But no, it is true, right? Like the context here is like, when you take an interest, when you go back into the history of it, because this is kind of what the song means, right? Is when you go back into the history and you truly understand the deity, the energy from a lived perspective. How has it lived through others, and how that is through their expression of it. So read mythology, read whatever you need to. I wasn't IBM data centers used by Nazis for recording Jewish people on the camps? Yeah, essentially. I mean, like, that was one of the biggest things that was learned from the German, period with all of that, was organization and the sheer like force that does. I'm going through everything you're talking about. Thank you for this live. Is the nonfiction about Cleopatra or the one by Sarah El Farifi? So Cleopatra by Schiff. So let me see. This is what's her name? I can't remember. Stacy. Schiff. I think she might have been over at Oxford or something like that. I just picked it up because it was right there on the top. No, I can tell you this. I do enjoy her perspective of filling out Cleopatra as a woman, and confronting all of the scholars and historians and their viewpoints, because she talks about these scholars that generally have a lot of glamour and magnitude around them as being, short-sighted, or she really helps ground them into the mundane world so that we can actually start to shift through and see and understand, what's the word, so we can see and understand the cultural context of what was going on, and like and the situation from a different perspective other than a Roman man. So I appreciate that. I will say that she has an interesting way of weaving in multiple events at once, which sometimes for me is a bit jarring. But I think that's history books in general, right? Because, like, they're trying to stick with facts and to build out things and stuff, and to build out multiple things happening at the same time. And so I could just not be that used to it yet. Okay. So I'm going to jump into the can either that is about Claude too, even if it will be able to have children. Mm-hmm. I'm just checking, speaking more into higher education, grad, and sort of the pros. Do you mind speaking more on higher education, grad school, and sort of the pros and cons? Sure. How one might be reinforcing a system you're trying to create something outside of. So, okay, when it comes to higher education, the one thing I will just say about higher education is you should always be in pursuit of higher education. And higher education just means that you are willing to deepen your knowledge on something. So you become a practitioner. To deepen your knowledge means that you learn, you consume about a thing, and you put it to practice, and you come out with an achievement of completion of some cycle, right? So to make it higher education, that's the difference between just learning things in general, and higher education. Is higher education is like a tower. You got to go through a gauntlet. And the gauntlet, usually there is some type of completion process. So, for instance, if you wanted to do higher education, so body, let's say that you're working on your body, you can go to the gym, okay, and you can get a trainer, okay. You can go to the gym and you can just do weights by yourself, or you can go to the gym and you can take a class, or you can take a ballet class, a ballet workshop. Okay. A ballet workshop is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's usually going to be a recital involved. So there's also going to be instruction involved. You're going to be expected to practice and stretch outside of work, outside of the space, because there will be a performance. Now, you're going to be a beginner, so nobody cares that you look kind of stupid half the time. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the point of beginners. When we get serious is when we move the beginners into the intermediate space. Those are the ones, and the dancers that have the stuff to, like, go on and perform more rigorously, right? Because they're practicing this as an art, they're dedicating more time to it. However, as a beginner, you went into higher education. Not only did you know a little bit about your body, you've probably done conditioning before, you've worked out at the gym before, you've done running before, these things, but you've never moved with your body before, told a story with your body. This is a totally different type of activity. You've done gym classes where you've danced and you've learned moves, but there's a je ne sais quoi that you don't seem to be picking up, that the teacher keeps going, okay, well, try it like this, try it like this. And you're like, well, I keep hitting the move. And she goes, no, like this. And then she asks somebody else to show you, and they do. Somebody dances with you, holds your body and moves it, and you're like, "Whoa," it feels foreign to you, it feels strange, you feel really embarrassed, you feel odd, you feel like everybody's watching you, and then eventually you start realizing that nobody actually cares, everybody's trying to figure out their own thing, and then you start learning what that je ne sais quoi actually is. You realize that the music does this interesting thing, and that's what's moving through your body. The violin, that's what's moving through your body. And then you come to a performance, you have some type of in completion like performance, like a recital, right? Where you get to put on the whole show. You get to show people that you learned how to make music with your body, and it's called dance. And that is higher education versus just going to the gym, just taking classes, just doing the workout, right? It's actually taking creativity to an academic level where you have some type of completion. So you challenge yourself. You have a guide or a mentor who's going to lead you through that challenge. You get to decide who that is, but you also have to be your own mentor through that as well and take on some extracurricular type of studying. So maybe you read books, you watch documentaries, you watch movies, you listen to music, you practice constantly, even when you're not in class. You're just obsessed all of a sudden in the world of dance, and you feel like a child again, and like everything is musical, everything is dance, and you let yourself get totally lost in it and totally have a great time and fun. And even you have ups and you have downs. You have great days, you have really bad classes where you found out that you're stiff as a board. You can't do anything. But the point is that you do it so often, you complete a whole circuit that you have grown from it. Okay. And so that can be done at home. You don't necessarily, again, you don't necessarily need to go anywhere and pay anybody to do any of this. You can actually have that entire experience at home. You can learn interpretive dance. It just takes more in, like, you must actually just go stretch, go do the first step. And the first step is to stretch. Do you know how to stretch yourself and then relax into the stretch? Or do you stretch and then go, oh, okay, that hurts. That's enough. Right? Do you know how to actually push yourself in a healthy way or not? This is how you become a better mentor to yourself. This is where you use AI. Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to dance, blah, 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 blah. And you get the AI to kind of instruct you a little bit, and you tell it what you're doing, and you become a little bit more involved, right? But you can do that with anything. Like, you can learn history that way. You pick up a history book and then you start asking. I do this all the time. When I'm reading my global economics book, I'll highlight a page and I'll go, oh my goodness, this sounds like when, and then I just type in my perspective or my framing of the whole situation, and then I have a conversation with AI about it, and sometimes that sparks new concepts and ideas. Like when I just learned about the World Monetary Fund, right, the WMF, and how that they how countries would have to go to them to get loans done, and how that was set to be healthy back in the day. But then after the crash, the gold standard was no longer used to support the dollar. How they reconstructed that, and then all of a sudden, only imperial countries benefited. Not everybody, really, to be totally honest. Most people just didn't benefit from it. But it seemed like disadvantaged countries or countries that weren't imperial powers really, really got the short end of the stick there, right? I had to research all of that and ask questions and stuff. And that's what I mean. Higher education, for me, a completion, for me, I just publish essays, right? I write essays and talk about things. I'm also in a class, so that naturally has a completion with it too. But you see how, like, it doesn't matter to me anything about what the teachers think. For me personally, a lot of my teachers aren't even, I had one teacher for negotiations, and honestly, she was terrible. She did such a horrible job. Um, she's probably stressed out and stuff like that, her job and everything going on in education, all that kind of stuff. But like, I really don't. And for the longest time, ever since I was a high schooler, I never really cared too much about the teachers or what teachers had to offer me, because oftentimes they didn't really have that much to offer besides, shrugs or, well, what we're focusing on right now is just this. So they couldn't answer questions that actually help build understanding. And then they wonder why half the class is like completely confused, and then the other half is just dissociated. You know what I mean? And they would lose people. But I learned early that, because I would read my textbooks and stuff before I went into class, that teachers oftentimes didn't really know as much, or that they were just a resource, and to treat them as a resource rather than as the end all be all of all knowledge. And that kind of led me down the path of always looking for other resources and stuff like that. And that's the huge part of higher education. If you get a master's, or if you go to and you get a bachelor's degree, you're just getting an introduction to many things. To get a master's means that you're hyper focused on some of those things, and to get a PhD means that you are creating in that space, and you're peer reviewed and stuff like that. But you're creating new conversations that are building off of old conversations, and it's verified verified that you understand the old conversations. Essentially, if you're not really interested in creating in like conversations and spaces, but you want to know information so that you can make better informed choices in your life, that's why higher education is for everybody, because at the base level everybody can do that. But as you gain higher education in certain areas and stuff, you can create things in those spaces with ease. That's usually the thing. Now, the downside of going to higher education and academia is that if you go into a system, then you have to conform to that system to some degree, while also maintaining what I just talked about, which is a bit more of a sovereign approach to your own education, right? Like you're accountable, you're responsible, you have ideas, you have a purpose, you have a course set for yourself. And then the system has a course set, an idea of you, and this, that, and the other. And then navigating those two things is just about keeping your eye on your goal. And I just generally throw everything to the side that doesn't align with my goal and focus on what does align with it. And so for me, having good grades is helpful because then I can graduate, right? And also like I can get into other programs and stuff like that. So of course I'm going to do what's necessary to get the base grade. And then everything else has nothing to do with the class. Like, we have quizzes and stuff like that. And it's like children's work where they want to make sure that you know what you read. And I think that that's silly, because if I'm going to have a discussion about it, then I should be able to show my knowledge through my discussion. Having me do little quizzes and stuff is annoying. So when I do little quizzes, I don't give very much attention to them, and I use whatever it means is at my disposal to make that as quick and as as painless as possible, right? And most of them are open book and stuff, so it's fine. You know what I mean? But like to me, a good grad program is one that focuses on the deepening of understanding of knowledge. So a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversation. I think in person is probably best in those cases, or an online like a really well done online program, which in America is hard to find, at least in my opinion, with the things that I look at, just because like there's a lot of system issues at the moment. Okay, so I just like the way you explained this, and I didn't have a way to articulate it. It's kind of DIY, do it yourself. Hold on. Hold on. How one might reinforce the system you're trying to create something else outside of. I've done tons of hobbies until I felt the intermediate level and then went into something else. Yeah. And that's fine too. Yeah. Once you get to Joy, perfect name for the example. But yeah, once you get to an intermediate level, you can choose to like keep going professionally and like meddle in things, right? Or that you've learned enough to be able to apply the like lessons that you learn to another aspect of your life and then move on. I do that all the time. I never need to be the best in the room. Like, you know what I mean? I just need to best the skills that I can so I can go into other rooms and dominate. And just have discernment with the American education system. Yeah, essentially, I have to decide whether or not to do it myself locally in a specific community or university. I just like the way that you explain this. Yeah. And I'm deciding if grad school is beneficial, right? With America, a lot of system issues. I mostly want the resources that, yeah, the reason why I just do the program that I'm in is because I just want the resources. Like without a global economics class, I'm not likely to pick up a global economics book on a specific topic. Like the book that I'm reading, I had the AI recommend it to me, funny enough. I just put in the topics that we were covering in class, and I said, what are some books and some conversations to help give me a really good overview of this entire class. So like if I didn't take the class and I just had these things, these would substitute for the class. So then this book came up. There's quite a few others. I have to read Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations to really understand where like the birth of kind of the economy that we're in. He's Scottish, funny enough. I saw his name a lot over when I was in Scotland. But like things like that, like books and resources. And this book, the T-shirt Traveling in the Global Economy, was one of them to really help me. And it's really good because it takes one product, right? And it traces the whole entirety of it. And it just so happens to focus on one specific economy and American trade, right? And then on top of that, it's one that's currently blowing up. You see, I couldn't have picked a better book myself. I couldn't have picked a better book myself. I picked one that literally organized all the history of what's happening in front of me, and then I can see it and use it in real time and go, wow, I totally understand these concepts and these ideas, and they're relational and stuff like that. So that's what I mean. Like it's all when you're self studied, as long as you understand that you need a challenge and you need to somehow show yourself that you have overcome a challenge. So it would be something like, do you write essays or share that information online, build an archive of it somehow. Like, you guys know I share my stuff all the time. Well, I share my essays, that I kind of write over the Midnight Scholar Society, and that's kind of how I get that out in other spaces. Also, I share the information with you guys so you guys can know more about global economies and stuff that's helpful in your everyday to life as an adult human being, to know that you are a global individual. Because when you don't know that, and you're not having those conversations, you're limited to your own creative thinking rather than realizing, like, yes, you actually can move and be a global entity of your own. You have your own energy, your own attention, your own, you can start a business. And what does that look like? I have a few of my own I have a few of my own things at play, that I'll talk about eventually, when it's less of an experiment and more of a case study. So I just like that you explain. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move into now the questionnaire. I'm going to do one, two of them, and then I'm going to go eat. Okay, everybody. So let me go ahead and set up the recording for it. Okay. Okay, we're going to hit the recording button now. And I'm going to record this part. Now, for everybody who is new, I record the frequently asked questions separately and post them separately so that you can resource those when you need them. But you can also watch this whole replay up on YouTube. You can also watch it on TikTok Live at the moment or on Patreon. And if you're on Patreon, you'll get an email when the uploads are uploaded. I usually try to get to them by the end of the week. And then you can have that. But yeah, all these will be there. Oh, also I need an animal card. So before I start, I'm going to go ahead and see what animal kind of pops up as the anchor message for this reading. You guys know I like to do them, and they haven't steered us wrong yet. So we'll keep going. See what animal pulls up, what energy. This one's a big one. Ooh. I said this one's a big one, and then we got bear. Boundaries. Stand your ground. So we'll find out. Underneath it is dove serenity. Slow down, pause, and breathe. So I always like to look at the bottom just in case, because it can be an underlying message. Okay. Got a little bit of water. And let's start. Do this tab, please. Sure. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our student FAQ for Tools of Consciousness. I'm going to go ahead and read this next question for us, and we're going to dive into what tools I think are helpful and useful. As usual, and I totally forgot, I'm going to put the PDF, the link to the PDF of our flow diagnostic sheet. This is the sheet that you can look at. It's a PDF that breaks down all the tools of consciousness, and also where you can find them over at the Midnight Scholar Society. So, like, which classes teach you which tools, essentially. And I'm going to put that a link to that PDF in the Patreon chat so that everybody has access to that. And then I got to pull it up for myself because I totally forgot. There we go. I usually try to have this on the screen, but I'm having a hard time because we're like streaming in 1,000 different places. We got a whole setup going on, and until technology advances in a way that just meets me, chef's kiss in the middle, we're just making do. Okay, so I pulled up the sheet, Flow Diagnostic Student Cheat Sheet. We get 3-layer diagnostics here. We try to locate the flow, locate the operational domain, and we try to locate what is the signature pattern that's surfacing so we can see where is the flow breakdown, what domain is it in. So usually I start with number 3 because symptoms are really easy to identify, and then we look at where the symptom happens and like how to solve it. Okay, so we're going to read the question, but I want you all to listen for these four major things, four major symptoms that's going to help us really diagnose what the problem is. So, one is urgency. Urgency is a timing issue, right? Collapse. Oh, and things are falling apart. That's a regulation issue. I have a lot of stimulus. I'm overwhelmed. Things are falling apart. Fixation. So this is the control, control, control. It's a role issue. I don't know who I am or how to or what to be in the situation to solve whatever problem I have. And then avoidance. Avoidance is another symptom. This is our last symptom. That's an action issue. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So taking action. When do I take action? What action do I take? How do I take action? So we're going to look for those four symptoms when I read this. And we'll keep in mind, again, the bear, boundaries, boundaries, stand your ground. We'll keep this in mind and see if it relates. All right. So what's your question? Here we go. I'm going to read the whole thing because it's a big paragraph. I don't want to read it in chunks like I usually do. Okay. I'm at an interesting juncture, one I've never been before. I've spent the last several years alchemizing the shit out of my life, and I've gotten really adept at it in a certain respect. I've made massive changes and gained mastery in certain areas, but I'm sick of myself. I'm sick of the ways I've been performing insecurity, and I'm sick of my creative voice. I paradoxically feel like seeking and the identity as the seeker is getting in the way of progress. So there are all of these habits occurred, and I don't feel good anymore in terms of the artistic expression and voice. The version that wants to emerge doesn't express in the language I've been using. I feel limited. I've written hundreds of thousands of words strewn everywhere, yet it's no longer interesting to me. I feel like I've outgrown something and the next thing hasn't arrived. I don't know what my next growth cycle wants to be: more embodied, more erotic, less spiritual, in the absence of sense. I think I've lost myself in abstraction. I would agree. I feel a little stuck, but more than anything, I feel that my pace is slow and it's hard to trust that, even though I explicitly trust that. it's, it's hard to trust, even though I explicitly trust that I'm stuck and that my pace is slow. I'm turning 40 in 6 weeks. My beloved dog and companion has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I'm sorry to hear that. Almost a year ago, I moved from Brooklyn to Spain. So we're in Spain now. I've cycled through various versions of identity and dreaming, and I feel a bit burnt out and full of whiplash. I want to start making income from creative streams, but I'm having a serious aversion to screens. I'm craving a life that is more in tune with the land and hands in the dirt, and time to explore new forms of artistic expression. I feel young and I feel old, and I feel adept and ill equipped, and I feel known and unknown. I'm familiar with the spiral process of things. I'm comfortable with the labyrinth. I thrive in paradox, but I know that's not what life is asking me for right now. It is asking for more of me and the material and getting more of my ideas into form. I feel lost when it comes to that part of the work, which is vital. I'm not sure where the question is here, but it's something about graduating from identity of spirituality as a distraction from an embodied life. Growing up in a new phase of maturity and adulthood, trusting that which is slow and steady rather than cycles of revere. Cheese. Okay, so I would say this person has listed what their problem is and listed their solution. People oftentimes do this, to be totally honest. Most of my one on ones, I just kind of laugh as I read them because I'm like, you guys know what your problem is and you know what your solution is, but you keep asking how to solve your problem instead of just doing the solution. So I would say, honestly, here, with this particular student, there's the constant, I know what I need to do, but I don't know what to do, and I don't know what, and I can't do it. Or I would do what I need to do if only I knew what to do, even though I know what to do, but I just can't do it. There's constantly this, like, do you know what you want? But then you're sick of it. You don't want to do those things, but you know you need to do something, right? But then you don't know what to do. So you get stuck doing nothing. And then that stuck becomes a belief. I always end up here. Every time I try to do something, it always brings me back here. And once I'm here, like, ugh, what is the point of this back and forth, this back and the forth? I've been there before. So this one here is an issue usually of action. So there's avoidance usually happening to some degree. I wouldn't say there's a regulation issue. Like there's not a lot of collapse is happening, and we'll talk about regulation because essentially what's going on is well, there's a few things that could be happening, and we have more information to find out, thankfully. But sometimes people have energy that comes to them, and they have a hard time holding it long enough to allow it to integrate into their system and become part of a whole. Instead, we focus on that energy and we focus on it and then build it by itself. And then we keep building it and it's its own thing on its own. And now it's this thing and our life. And it's hard to converge those two things. It's hard to integrate them. So sometimes that looks like, and I'll give you a really good example of what that's like in the mundane world. That's like one person, they have a friend at work and they have a friend in their personal life, and they have a hard time mitigating energy of which friend they spend time with because they want to spend time with both of them. And so then they bring both of those friends together. They spend time together and the two friends don't really get along because the work friend is built off of a total different experience than the personal friend. So the two friends don't get along, but not really. It's not a really good vibe. So this person can't really merge them. It's like they have to spend time separately or let go of one or what, right? This is where we get like the I don't really know what to do here. So this is oftentimes a role issue, of what role, what do these things play in my life. This is also kind of an avoidance issue of taking action. So I would focus on role and action more than I would the other things. The timing and regulation are important. So, but I wouldn't say that there's not a lot of urgency here. Okay, like I didn't really read a ton of urgency in this, except for I'll be 40 in 6 weeks. So there's a little bit of exhaustion, but not really urgency. I would say burnout more so. And burnout is more of a sign of collapse and regulation. So I would consider regulation, but I would focus more so on role and taking action, because what's throwing this person, what's dysregulating them consistently, is not knowing what role to take or what action to take and what role to play and how those roles fit. So there's an organizational issue going on. So I'm going to read the next part here now that we kind of know what pattern we're looking at. And I just want to explain to you guys again, and it becomes more second nature the more that you do it with yourself, right? I'm doing it with all of you. So there's a lot of different, like, last time I checked, there's like, upwards of 50 of these. So I'm doing this with like, everybody's different. You guys are constantly doing this with just yourself. So you figuring out the tools and how they work on you and stuff like that is going to be far more intuitive and far more easy to decipher and to discern because you're working with one person, you. Okay. You have the energy in front of you. I'm constantly diagnosing totally different people. So you get to see an array of different issues that you've probably experienced, and you get to hear totally different reframes that help you along the way. But again, it's going to be much easier for you to decide whether you feel urgent, whether you feel like the world's crashing in on you, collapse, whether you feel like you can't let something go, you're obsessed, you keep overthinking about something, fixation, or whether you feel avoidant, like you just really don't want to have to think about or do this other thing, right? You're going to know those really easy in your body. It can be difficult to identify them in others. So don't get discouraged if you're like, I can't identify that from what that person said. That's okay. You're not here to identify it in others. You're here to just identify it in yourself. And hearing about others can really help you with that step in that process. So I like to say that occasionally. So that being said, I think we've identified here that role fixation, of like there's a fixation of like I keep the key word here is abstraction, right? Where were we? I feel like I keep abstracting everything, right? I've journaled this. I can't stand my own voice. I think about this. I'm too self. Oh wait, no, this is the wrong thing. Abstraction. I think I've lost myself in abstraction. That's where we go. So this is overthinking, fixation, and then action. I don't know what step to take. I feel lost when it comes to that part of the work, which is vital, right? Which is what do I do? I thrive in paradox, but I know that's not what's asking for me. It's asking for me to be more in the material. I need to be embodied and do something. So what do I do? Okay. So just those two things alone, I'm going to pause really quick and talk about what we do to figure out um role calibration and action. So I'm on the PDF right now, and I go to phase 3 alignment, which talks all about role calibration. These are tools that help you identify the mythological stories that are happening, the mythological patterns that are happening in your life. So in the live earlier, by the way, for anybody watching this in the future, the live was recorded on March 26th. So the live will be posted, the replay of that will be posted on the same date that this video is posted, which will probably probably somewhere between 26, 27, 28, 29, something like that. But on the live that was proposed that same day, I was talking an awful lot about current events and and global economics. And in global economics, we understand that like there's a pattern. History repeats itself consistently. The philosophy that people have, the belief systems that they have, invent themselves, reinvent themselves. Okay. So, in other words, if you believe that you can build something that will take you to the moon, you are going to spend all of your time building something that will take you to the moon. Whether you achieve that or not, whether it collapses underneath you, that's all up to 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 the future, right? But history will see the pattern of you building something to go to the moon. You can't escape that. You can't be like, no, actually, I was doing OF, like I was on OnlyFans during that era. No, you weren't. You were working at NASA. Like everybody saw you. Everybody knows that you were. Your belief system was that you can build something to go to the moon. So that's what you did. Um, so role calibration, right, is all about figuring out like what is my role in any given situation, environment, and relationship. When you know what your role is, what your purpose is. So in any relationship, my purpose is to enjoy myself. In any environment, my purpose is to enjoy myself. And in any dynamic, any situation, my purpose is to enjoy myself. I set my purpose to that because it is easy. Enjoyment means to fulfill myself or to achieve success in the exchange. If that's not happening, then I stop and reassess. Either I'm not compatible or I need to refine or realign what I'm doing, right? But it not being compatible in the moment, or it not me not knowing my purpose, or me not enjoying myself, I should say that me not enjoying myself is a signal, right, that my purpose isn't being fulfilled, my enjoyment. So I need to take another look at why I'm here in the room, the situation, or in the relationship. And when you do that, you learn about yourself, and then you can make adjustments. And either those adjustments make it easier to be in that room, the situation, or the relationship, or that adjustments shifts the room, the situation, or the relationships that you're in. Either you leave or it gets better. You stay and it gets better. It's either one or the other. Either you're compatible and you just need to open your mind, right? Open your mind. That's sorry. But see, boundaries. I'm talking about boundaries here. So here's the bear came up. Stand your ground, right? Boundaries are like what do you give your presence or your absence to? I say this all the time in all the classes. A boundary has nothing to do with anyone else. It's everything to do with where do you give your attention, your presence? Where do you show up? Where do you not show up? If you don't agree, don't show up. If you agree, show up. If you show up, you're saying, I agree. You could be saying, I agree with nothing but this one thing, but you're saying, I agree. Okay. You're saying you're there out of coercion, but you still agree and you're still going to give all your energy to it, even if it's only for this little bit. You don't want any of the other stuff, but you're still going to show up. You're still going to give all of your energy, even if it's just for crumbs. A lot of people are in relationships like that, right? Oh, well, I'm in this relationship, but like, I don't agree with this. I'm like this person doing this. I don't really like this about them, this, and this. But like it really, they know me for a long time. They really like know everything about me. And they're really good at birthday surprises. They make a lot of money and we go places, and like, my friends are miserable dating and I'm not. You get regular boinks going on, right? Or maybe not. I don't know how people are who are unhappy. But like, like there's 1,000 things to be unhappy about, right? So like if you're in a relationship and you don't really enjoy yourself, you are giving energy to a situation for crumbs. If you enjoy yourself, you're getting a full meal, you're satiated, and perhaps more. So it really just becomes boundaries are more about how you treat yourself. Do you nourish yourself to a full set of enjoyment, or do you just nourish yourself to crumbs, which isn't much nourishment as much as deprivation, right? You're starving essentially. So role calibration, it teaches you what stories are going around. So this is where media literacy picks up. We have mastering the cosmos here, creative entrepreneurship, and planetary intelligence. Generally, I go in those orders. Mastering the cosmos is first because you learn a lot of Greek mythology. Greek because you speak English, and in a Western world, you need to understand the symbolic imagery of the things around you so that you can decode that natively, not just on what you think or what you believe or what you wish. You want to know what other people actually intend, and also what they intend, and what impression they actually leave. In art, we use symbology all the time, right? But I can use symbology to mean something and not intend a totally different message that is still being broadcasted. Can you see both messages or multiple messages in just one piece of art? Is the question there. And mastering the cosmos is learning the mythological bones for that. We also cover, and I talk about women who run with wolves a lot through that class because we're reading that at the time, to really help you understand role and like the feminine aspects, and the roles that are played. The role that is selected is selecting a role, and what role you play is a feminine state. That's a feminine activity, because this requires you to ask, what do I wish to receive, right? And what do I wish to give? So this is all like energetic based. So this is like the Libra and the scales of energy. What do you wish to give and what do you wish to receive? This is how contracts are made. This is how you exchange things for anything, right? And it's done with discernment. It's actually very much a mental activity to some degree. But this is where discernment comes in, where you're using reason, not just logic. Logic says here's what the math is, but this is when we apply English, right, to mathematical formula to find out what actually the math is. So this is what the numbers say, but these are who the numbers are about, so to speak, and that tells us a totally different picture, right? And then obviously, you have even higher forms of reception, like visual symbology. So like these are the words of what is being said, but this is what's actually being felt. This is what's being seen. This is all like to receive this type of information and to understand your role and what your purpose is in a situation, to be able to see what's being presented to you, what roles are you being asked to play. This requires you to be in a calm, relaxed, feminine state. So you learn an awful lot about those stories and what happens when there's distortion, right? Planetary intelligence is where a lot of that comes into play, and creative entrepreneurship is where we put a lot of that stuff into practicality, where you're being asked to like actually start moving and thinking and doing and doing and doing and doing. Select these things. I also do a little bit where I teach you how to kind of build stuff in AI a little. It comes with a PDF, I think, spiritual business, the blueprint for spiritual business, and it kind of teaches you how to like not only build kind of like a passive income funnel, but also how to situate yourself energetically using your four bodies, your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual body, to how to get in alignment with those and to be in alignment. Because your work, instead of your work being what you do, it becomes keeping yourself maintaining and sustaining alignment. When you can maintain and sustain alignment, the work is always going to be there. It's always going to like that's always the thing. That's inevitable. What you do is inevitable, but how you do it, that's where alignment comes in. Do you do it well? Do you do it half-assed? Do you do it haphazardly? Do you do it under stress? Do you do it with ease? You can set the tone for how you do things, right? So that's where that's taught. And that kind of takes most of all of this into account. So what I would advise the student to do would be to, there's already a lot of journaling and a lot of stuff going on. I would say to start the artist way, to take a look at that, even if they just kind of skim a little bit to well, I should say this, we're going to take a note from the artist way of doing a detox where you don't consume anything for a little while. I would say give it like a week, maybe 2 weeks, where you don't consume anything, you don't read anything, you don't watch any media, no really scrolling on social media, nothing like that. You just do. You don't consume anything. When you're in a resting state, like there's two things you can do when you're in a feminine state. You can consume, like receive information, or you can be. And the being brings you into the present moment where you sit with yourself in the present moment. You're not talking to anyone. You're not being of service to anyone. You're not doing anything. You're just there. Can you lay down on the ground and just stare up at the sky? Can you do that instead of consuming something? What happens if you don't consume? What happens if you don't read that book? I'm telling you this is somebody who has like 15,000 different books open at one time, right? I've got like 4 documentaries going at one time. I got like 3 movies. I got 1 movie on pause. Idiocracy, idiocracy. Anyways, I have a movie on pause. I have a few shows on pause. You know what I'm saying? Like, as somebody who literally teaches media literacy, so I'm constantly inundated in media, I can tell you that I totally 100% totally relate to that feeling of not being able to sit and do nothing, to that, like, what happens if I don't consume this, if I don't read this, I'll fall behind, or this or that. Nope. You're not allowed to listen to any of those fears. It's all an illusion. You need to sit and do absolutely nothing, because what's out of whack here, and this moves us into action. So I would move down. Energy exchange and discernment is also a tool and role calibration that I think is worth looking into, but you're going to learn those things in planetary intelligence and creative entrepreneurship. So those 2 courses teach these 2 tools. Essentially, embracing the elements is here as well, and that'll help you with understanding the 4 bodies at a deeper level if you're having a hard time with discernment. And I'll read the next paragraph to see, to tell me what's happening, if there's anything else there that would have me really recommend embracing the elements. But moving on to not timing literacy. Hold on. Story architecture kind of fits here a little bit. Okay, so so I have some integration stuff. So, okay, hold on. Let me see. Timing, one action. Let me scroll up really quick. Okay, so reorientation protocols, that's part of action, and that's actually up here in phase 1. Reorientation. So reorientation is what happens. So this is kind of part of regulation. Okay. When you get dysregulated, generally what happens is you have a hard time getting reoriented, right? So you can recognize, holy shit, I'm spiraling. You can stop the spiral. You can identify what the spiral is. You can reflect on the spiral, but then how do you reorient yourself or get back into alignment? Orientation protocols. That's also taught. I mentioned the artist way, right? When I said, let's take a page from that book and go on a screen or a consumption detox. That would be kind of like helping with reorientation. I don't think it's totally necessary to get told to like do an entire reorientation. I mean, it could be. It really depends on the student, right? Like, and what they feel. So really, sit in that with yourself. But creative awakening is the artist way. Embracing the elements, I already mentioned that. And then the non-material senses is a really short. There's short videos that I made to help explain to people their non-material senses. So you have 5 material ones: sight, sound, taste, touch, and all that kind of stuff. Your non-material ones are the ones that are they're for your metacognition. So you have your sense of self, desire, thought, feeling, will, magnitude, perception, presence, belief. What else is there? Knowing, vision, and oneness. There's like 12, right? I just base them off of zodiac signs. I go and I describe what those are, so you can actually get into understanding how those feel in your body. Okay, so how it feels, like you use perception all the time, you use magnitude all the time. Sometimes you're staring at this stuff, and you're in the details, right? And you can't see the big picture. Sometimes you see the big picture and you can't see the details. That's magnitude. And being able to recognize which one you're in and how to shift out of that and into the other one helps with regulation so much. It helps you reorient. Sometimes you're stuck in the details or you're stuck in the weeds and you need to take a step back to reorient, right? So, like, knowing how and what's reorienting, what senses are out of whack or alarmed and stuff like that can be really helpful. So the reorientation protocols, those are on here. Again, that was on the PDF. This is underneath phase 2, stabilization. And it's underneath recovery practices. It's on page 5 at the bottom, reorientation protocols. So those ones are important, okay? But it only depends. If you feel like you reorient really well, you like bounce back really fast, you just don't know what to do once you bounce back. That's when I say let's look down at phase 4. This is moving. How do you move? How do you move? I don't think you need any timing literacy because you don't seem to be rushed by urgency, but the one clear action method is where I want to put all the focus here. So when I said what's your purpose always needs to be to enjoy yourself or to have joy in a relationship. If you're like, well, I'm dating for marriage, that's right. No, you're not. You're dating to enjoy yourself. What does enjoying yourself mean? Obviously, it means if that means getting married to you, then there you go. Obviously, it means that if that means you never get married, there you go. You don't need to be focused on controlling what another person has to offer. Focus on you enjoying yourself. And somebody will always come along who matches that frequency, but you got to be at the frequency to match it. If you're at the frequency of there's nobody out there who's like this, or I'm the only one, or this is scarce, or whatever, or I'm going to have to settle in some way. You will always attract people who are almost there and can breadcrumb you. And they feel probably like you're being unfair if you complain about them breadcrumbing you, because that would be unfair because they presented themselves honestly, right? They said, hey, I ain't about shit. No, I'm just saying. You can be incompatible without being, not about shit. But one clear action method, okay? This is when you feel overwhelmed or stuck. This is these courses are going to teach you. And again, creative entrepreneurship, planetary intelligence, creative awakening. We've already talked about these courses. So essentially, when when you take the courses, you're learning and you're practicing all of these tools in different ways. So it doesn't so I should say, especially planetary intelligence and creative entrepreneurship for this particular student, I would say that's really important. Doing those two alone is really going to help not only reorient you, but also get you out of the stuck place and into moving. Because what those tools teach you how to do is how to identify joy, how to have mindset frames around it. So that way you can achieve the frequency and sit in that and learn how to sit in the frequency and let things come to you. And then when something comes to you, how to engage. When your joy shows up in front of you, you engage with it. And I tell you, it's as simple as starting with things like when you have to pee, go to the bathroom, listen to your body and respond to it immediately. When you do that, your brain understands that you're in the habit of responding to positive stimuli immediately. You will respond. So it's going to send you messages faster and faster and faster and clearer and clearer and clearer because you're actually picking them up, right? If you don't pick up the phone, you can't expect the person on the other end, if you're notoriously bad for ever answering the phone, to like not be surprised when you do. Whoa, right? You got to build that confidence. And that's this student mentioned trust earlier, right? That the only thing that they trust is that they're stuck. Well, yeah, that's because you got to rebuild your confidence in yourself. It's not that you have to rebuild trust. Trust always exists. You either trust that things are good or you trust that things are bad. Trust exists, but confidence in the trust that you have that things can go well needs to go up. Right now you have a lot of confidence that things go poorly, that you stay stuck. And because you have trust there, you build habits to keep that going. Trust is a belief system. I trust, I believe that I'm stuck. I believe that this limiting belief has to be here. And the thing is it feels so true. That's the thing, is you have to allow yourself to feel that way without pushing against it, because every time you touch it, you push against it. You're telling it to push towards you. Right. But when you go, you know what, I'm just going to let this sit there. And you know what, if I'm stuck, I'm stuck. If something else comes up, something else comes up. There you go. Leave it up to chance. And then just go and chill. And when you chill and something comes to you and says, well, would you like to do this? Then go do it. And if you do it and it leads to like nothing and it just teeters out, let it teeter out and go back to, you remove your emotional reaction to the experience. When something teeters out, let it teeter out. Go, and something else comes up, go do that. And you're like, I'm so tired of things going back and forth. That's because you've yet to understand how to integrate all of those things. You're capturing those things, you're being reflective of those things, but integration is to reflect and then to apply to the next thing as you move. But also you have to apply the lesson of letting it come to you and then doing just a little bit and seeing what happens. You got to get pulled back. There's a lot of energy to move forward and to do stuff, and that can make you feel stuck because the you're supposed to pull back. You got to pull back. And then all of a sudden things start moving because you're no longer trying to make the pace move yourself. You're just allowing things to actually move. It's a 180 way of living and experiencing things. And once you do, it feels so silly where you're like, oh my goodness, you mean don't do anything and just let it do itself? Yeah, that's a total 180 if you're really sure that you have to change things. And it can be tough, but like once you experience the joys and the benefits of things that come to you, like these days, man, I just write down in my journal what I want. And by what I want, I just mean like I write down a thought, an interesting experience, and then I just let it go. And then my email, boom, I get an invitation. It's wild every time it happens. I'm like, I really I gotta put some more effort into this because what do you mean you just send me the email that I'm looking for? Like just randomly, like I get tons of emails. Some of them are junk and some are golden nuggets, and the golden nuggets pay off and you can spot them because it shows up exactly as you willed it instead of in crumbs and stuff. And so creative entrepreneurship will get you into the space to be able to do that. Okay, I'm gonna skim over this big paragraph really quick and see if there's anything I need to add. Okay, so I've seen that there is a massive skill gap between moving in the realms of abstraction and into the embodied life of the artist world. I see myself as an artist, but I also realize I'm not living that life quite yet. The artist way. So yeah, I'm gonna say go ahead and do creative awakening. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna say do the artist way, because I feel like there's probably a lot of journaling going on, but it's not as organized. In the artist way, the do it 1 week at a time with the lectures that I have. Even if you've read it before, then just do the lectures and do it 1 week at a time and apply what you remember from having read it or just reread. Mine comes with the book attached as a PDF. So like just redo it and really commit to the journaling prompts. Okay, as many as you can to really help, because what needs to happen is there's a whole habit system. Your habits are set towards like colonial productivity, and you've got to resituate them into the space of receptivity, where you're receptive. So for instance, a lot of people in the global economy are conditioned to be laborers. You're conditioned to produce outward, and business owners are produced to receive. That's why there's wealth distribution problems, because all of you are sending out your energy and none of you are receiving anything or even signaling that you have something to receive, that you're open to receive. You don't know how to. You don't even know that you're supposed to. You don't even know that that's a thing. And even the people who are doing it unconsciously. So, like the white guys who benefit, they're all doing it unconsciously because they've built a system off of everybody else's labor that's extrapolative, right? So, of course, when they go back to understand it, it's all Eurocentric and they don't know how it actually works. They think that they do, but they don't actually know any of the labor and how that all plays into it. You can see that with the advent of things like design theory, where somebody had the brilliant idea to ask the person, and this is a business theory where it came out of the business realm, right? Where you're supposed to ask people who have a problem questions about their problem to come up with creative solutions for fixing it. You're not supposed to just know how to solve the problem without asking anybody or the person with the problem. You're just supposed to divine it yourself, is the way that things were before. And now they're like, wait, maybe ask the customer for feedback. You see how slow that thought process is? Hospitality, it was an industry that took a massive hit in 2008. So there's a lot of like, slowed learning and slowed reflection in those spaces, but that's kind of where it is. So anyway, people have been conditioned, mass majority of people are conditioned to be productive laborers, not receptive business owners, people who are sovereign over their own labor. You're conditioned for your labor to be extrapolated from you and separate from you. And so you need to reattach your labor to you, your creative output to you. And so that means receiving receiving the benefits from all of that and stuff. So you have to shift your energy around. So that's what creative awakening and creative entrepreneurship will help you with, those two things. And planetary intelligence, mastering the cosmos, those, and embracing the elements and the 12 non-material senses, all of those things that are kind of mentioned here, all of those set you up to be able to do that, because you then learn not only what tools are at your disposal, but how to use them. And also, you get plenty of prompts and stuff like that to put that into practical application. And it's going to come up in your life, and you're going to have plenty of ability to apply it. In fact, I would tell the student who's listening to this to make sure you listen to the live recording in the it's in season 3 for anybody from the future, that's published on the same date as this video that you're listening to, because earlier I talked an awful lot, like I said earlier, about global economics. And in one of those what was I saying? I kept, I always have to be like, make sure you go and watch this thing, and then I lose a thread. But no, I talked a lot about, and there's quite a few examples there that I think are helpful about how, when you engage, I talked about my son, like I was reading a book because I said that I wanted to embody having a healthy relationship with my son. And while that's one thing to wish for, you also have to put in the work to do it. So a book came by my TikTok page. It was called Strong Mothers, Strong Sons. I don't know. So I just decided to pick it up and read it. Do I know whether the person is the best and this, that? No, I just picked up the book and saw what was inside. I was a little shocked about what was inside because it's also slightly clinical. And so, it's a woman talking about her clinical studies. And I was like a little horrified by the demographic. I was like, Jesus Christ, what's going on over there? Right. And it's the 90s and stuff. So I'm getting a little bit of a cultural kind of take on things, but also there's some golden nuggets in there. And by listening to those nuggets, it helped me navigate the situation, which I normally would have just been like, yeah, let's go to the bookstore. You can grab a book or whatever. Or I just would have been like, oh, let's grab it off Amazon. It's probably cheaper or something like that. I would have just found the most efficient way to go about what my son was asking, instead of seeing it as an invitation to, just for those of you who aren't going to go back and watch it. My son had asked to go to the bookstore, long story short. And I saw it as an invitation to actually just do something that he wanted to do. He was inviting me to go out, not asking for permission. Right. And so it's like, oh, and asking me, I'm thinking most efficient. And I think economically as a parent, right? What's the best way to go about this? The fastest and the best way. Whereas not everything needs to be an economical decision. Sometimes it's an invitation to connect. And so I had that at the top of my mind. So I looked at it. I looked at the entire situation through that lens. And not only did I have a great time experiencing with my son also showed me that he had learned a lot in, his own media literacy class. And then also I got to experience picking up some books and some titles that I had no plans whatsoever to be picking up any history books. And I just know that I've been wanting to read in a different genre. And I've been wanting some type of itch to be scratched. And there it was right there. A gift, right? And I was just following a universal flow, the Tao. Okay. I was just following the flow of things. And because I embodied a wish, I just embodied the energy. I did what someone who wants a healthy relationship would do. I looked for more information on it, right? I just looked to pick up my literacy. It put my mind open. It moved the limitations or the paradigms that I didn't even know were there necessarily, made me aware of them so I could act outside of them. And then I did, and I was greatly rewarded in many different ways besides one. So that's why I'm going to say, yes, embodying. Do those courses. I don't even think I need to read the rest. Plus, I'm hungry and it's almost 8. Yeah, I think we're just gonna do the one today, guys. Good news is I got all of the live stuff set up and the bugs kind of fixed. You know what I mean? Like, you guys can see me and it's not terrible like usual. Although I do feel like I'm staring up at you all the time. No, I'm staring up at the screen. Maybe if I lift you guys up, it's like now I can't see the screen. But yeah. I'm just thinking, oh no, did I fuck up the video? Oh no, guys. I don't know what happened to the video. I'm like, what's wrong with the video? I think you guys can still hear me though, can't you? I sure hope so. Let me see. Yeah, hold on. I know you guys can still hear me, but let's hit play on that video. No, how do I restart this? Let me see. Quick. It's just saying not connected. Okay, there we go. Okay. No, stop asking me to keep my memory safe. Don't be weird. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think that's it. All that to say that. For this question specifically, yeah. Honestly, there's some more information down here, like where they can feel it in their body, their chest, and their limbs. I would say, especially their hands. I would say do a lot of stretching in those areas. Fascial tissue massage is really important, so do some learning about that. And for the most part, what I'm just saying is your plasma body is very much connected somehow with your fascia. Okay, your fascia tissue. It's what connects your skeleton and your muscles and everything, and it's what shapes you. You are the shape of your fascia. Okay, whatever your fascia has gone through is you look like it. So you want to do lots of stretching to kind of relieve any tight, tense spaces and stuff like that. And also, the more stretching that you do, right, the more mindful stretching, get into your body and feel your body. Do stretching like you did when you were a kid. I was just laying down, stretching on the floor, and I have this blue chair behind me, and I put my head on the edge of the chair, and I felt like I hadn't done that since I was a kid. Just put my head on a chair while laying on the floor, and I was reading, and I was like, oh, it felt so good. My whole body melted like butter. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just melted so perfectly into a stretch. And it's a stretch that usually otherwise I feel a lot of tension. So it's important for you to go back and to do things with your body that you haven't done since you were a kid. Because the more your body, the more flexible you are, the more your mind also feels like it's flexible. You are more flexible. You are, think about your flexibility as your ability to hold, maintain, and to contort with the energy that you carry. Can you carry your own energy? Do you have flexibility, or do you feel rigid in your body? Those things too. So I would say trusting my organic slow pacing, shifting from meaning, taking on to matter. What a shift are you hoping? So these will definitely, I'm going to tell you, 3 months, just the artist way, and any of the other classes periodically taken as you do the artist way. The artist way is the only thing that I would say stay on a nice pace and schedule with. You don't want to get off schedule with that. The other things, take them as you do. You know what I'm saying? I'm a type person. I like to go through stuff. You know what I mean? But for but I always end up finding that I get the most benefit when I just allow myself to just do things naturally. Sometimes that means I'm going to binge one thing, and that means that it's going to take me more than a week to just get through another thing, right? Like, I just go with what works, because one thing that you're going to learn, and that you're going to hear me say it over and over and over again, is that everything in its own timing happens perfectly and naturally. That's divine timing. Okay, so you're just going to put off something, not know why you've put it off, and then it's going to show up at the right time. um you're like, wow, if I had done this 2 weeks ago, I would have never known all of this stuff. So I'm glad I waited. That happens all the time. That's why I no longer freak out anymore. I used to, like, you see how thin this book is? I used to be able to read something like this in a sitting. Okay. This is like 160 pages. I'd have been done with this in one day and called and been done, right? Um, but now I take my time through these things, and I don't panic when, like, oh my goodness, like book club is in a few days actually, and I still have to get through this. But I don't panic and stuff like that, because the timing always seems to work out. I read stuff at the right time. I'll read about king archetypes while I also happen to see a movie that has king archetypes, and there's another book on my shelf that has all this stuff, and then the conversations happen at the same time that reveal, and it all converges in the right way. And so you want your conversion points to be like perfectly timed, and the only way to do that is to allow them to be. When you try to control timing, or you kind of try to control how things go, or you try to map it out, vision boards make those energy. Okay, your vision should keep that fantasy, keep it all fantasy. Don't try to make it real and concrete. A lot of people do manifest that way, but their manifestations come through very, like, shallowly, or they get attached to material things and can be thrown off their game very easily. Instead, try to manifest energy, sit in energy, recognize what energy feels like when it's foreign, when it's familiar, all of that kind of stuff. I teach you all that in planetary intelligence specifically. But when you sit with, and when you pull energy towards you, especially when it's unknown to you, and you just allow it to sit and to relax, just like stretching the body. You go to tension, a point of tension, and then you relax in it, and you let your body mold like butter, like melt like butter around all that tension. And now all of a sudden you're stretched and you're relaxed into the stretch. That's kind of how you want to interact with energy, is you want to allow that to kind of happen, is that some unknown energy comes into you, you allow it to sit and to dissipate and to kind of move out in your system and make itself known to you. And it does. It shows up in all sorts of ways. Like for me, it shows up as books all the time, funny enough, and invites and this and that and everything. Your whole world starts to light up. Okay, everybody, that's it. I think the bear card went into this really well. Boundaries was a huge thing. So keep that in mind. I'll be titling this The Bear, like the show, which I have to finish. I didn't finish season, what is it, 3 or something like that? 2, something like that. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna title this The Bear, so you'll know when you see it. And that's it. Okay. So that's it on Loom. I'm going to have the bear. The bear. All right, guys. This is going to be up later on this weekend. The replays. And the replays also going to be on YouTube. We're on YouTube now. Yay. Yay. We're on YouTube now. Where else? TikTok, Patreon. Yeah, join book club. Book club's on Tuesday. We're going to be talking about all this stuff and so many more other fun goody things to come. Let me look over at TikTok really quick. Oh, I don't know if I ever came back video wise, y'all. I'm so sorry. Oh, the psych ward is a consumption detox. Yeah, it would be. It would be. Where is this talk? On what platform, if I may ask? Oh, on Patreon. I am always. I'm on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok. You can go to the link to my bio. You can join the newsletter, Midnight Scholar Society. It'll send you to my Patreon, which is free. You get newsletters and stuff like that monthly. And if you want, you can join, and you can be a student and join book club discussions and stuff to be able to get all of the course material that I talked about. Because tools of consciousness, what they are, how you use them. It's a lot in literacy, media literacy. You're going to be learning and exploring different subjects and fields like depth psychology, neuroscience, behavioral, human behavior, anthropology, history. We cover a lot of cool different things, but mainly through the lens of literacy. So, I teach you essentially how to have some the language of spirit, so symbolic literacy. So you learn how to understand yourself, the symbols around you, the symbols that make up you, and how to reformulate those things to create new belief systems for yourself so that you can navigate through life. You can, and the way that you create new belief systems is just by adding to the ones that you already have. You know what I'm saying? It's not that you turn into a totally different person, swish, swish. You just add more to who you already are. You add on, and adding on means you expand to be able to do and see more in your life. So yeah, it's really cool. Okay, everybody, that's it. I'm going to eat now. Good night. Okay. Let me look at the Patreon really quick. I gotta move this. Okay. I can hear, just not see it. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we can hear, we can see now. Okay. If I decide to reorient with a media cleanse, does that mean we shouldn't read Work on the Artist's Way and other courses during the cleanse? Honestly, I would say, yeah, do like a nice, do what works for you. Okay. If you're like, I'm doing the Artist's Way and this is really helping me stay oriented and stay grounded, I'm not going to say don't do that while you're staying grounded. Maybe that's a little intense, right? But like, I think the cleanse is just a week. I think one of the weeks is just to cleanse. So like, that's your homework for the week. So that includes the Artist's Way, because you're not going to read it. You're on a cleanse, right? That's your homework for the week. Yeah. So I mean, like technically it adds to it. I wouldn't do it for more than a week or more than the prescribed time if you feel like this helps ground you. You know what I mean? Because like, it depends on what stage you're in. But if you're like you're doing pretty well and stuff like that, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just I'm picking up all these things, this, that, and the other, but like I'm not having that breakthrough. I feel like I'm overwhelmed with information. Take a cleanse. Take a cleanse. Lay out in the sun. Lay out and just look at the trees. Take in nothing but what's real and in front of you. That totally cleans out your imagination in ways that you all cannot fathom. But when you're watching stuff, when you've got things going on, it all needs to be processed. And usually that processing time happens at night Or if you're not sharing, like, you guys notice when I read stuff, like I read chapter 1 of Peter Pan and then I'm on the internet talking about it. Chapter 2, chapter 3, I'm talking about it. I read like a few sections, I'm talking about it. I read a little bit from my book on the global economy of t-shirts, and I'm talking about it and I'm talking about it. It's because I'm processing it out. Writing essays and stuff is a great way to learn. That's a learning technique in itself. You're processing. When I teach, I'm processing information. A lot of it, well, when I talk about current events and stuff, right? But that's processing. If you're not doing that, then the only time you can process stuff is while you're sleeping, while you're processing everything. So that can get clogged up. So yeah. Okay, if that's it, everybody, I'm gonna go eat now. If you can't tell, I'm hungry. Oh, also I have to do that essay. Oh, and then I can play Marvel Rivals. Yay. Okay. Everybody, good night. Have an amazing evening. And for homework, go enjoy yourself. Just ask yourself every day this week, do I enjoy the situation, the environment, or the relationship that you just so happen to find yourself in that moment? Okay, just whenever you're in the moment, you walk, you sit down at a bus stop, are you enjoying yourself? Just ask yourself that question, and be okay with whatever the answer is. Don't attach emotion to the answer. If it's yes, okay. If it's no, interesting. Take that information in and just be curious. Practice curiosity about inquiring about your joy. That's it. Okay. Now that really